We're live on YouTube. One minute to Shaw.
Madison, do we have everybody?
We do have everybody, and we're a few seconds to Shaw. Fifteen seconds to Shaw. We're now live on Shaw.
Okay, so I understand we're live. I want to welcome you all to our meeting this evening. I want to thank our media partners and our broadcasting partners for reporting on our meeting and broadcasting it. At Council, I welcome you to signal through your respective videos that you do want to speak to something. You can also send me a message. I'm at my computer, so you can email me or you can send me a text to my phone and indicate if you wanted to speak something. So appreciate everybody's attendance tonight, and we have a number of substantial items on our agenda to get to, so we'll start our meeting. Madam Clerk.
Under agenda item 1, I have a motion by Councillors Nero and Shoemaker, resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of October 13, 2020 be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And under agenda item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest, I have no declared pecuniary interest this afternoon.
Very well. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Under agenda item 4, a motion by Councillors Bruni and Hilsinger, resolved that the agenda for October 26, 2020 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
Under agenda item 5.1, Taoist Tai Chi Arts 50th Anniversary Day, there is a proclamation.
Okay, so I have a proclamation here. Whereas 2020 is the 50th anniversary of the Taoist Tai Chi Arts in Canada, which promotes the ancient practices of Taoism that enriches mental, spiritual, and physical well-being. Whereas 50 years ago, the Taoist Tai Chi teaching began in Canada, and today the Institute of Taoism, along with its affiliates across the world, have trained volunteer instructors offering Taoist Tai Chi practice, and currently there are more than 40,000 participants to 26 countries, including 11,016 participants in over 330 locations in Canada with 1,200 instructors. Whereas it is altogether fitting and proper that Canada, with its diverse population and commitment to multiculturalism, should recognize the Institute of Taoism in its endeavor to bring these arts which promote good health, the richness of Chinese culture, and a greater understanding and respect amongst all people. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim November 7th, 2020 as the Taoist Tai Chi Arts 50th Anniversary Day in Sault Ste. Marie, in recognition of Fung Loi Kok's remarkable journey of 50 years. Thank you very much.
Under agenda item 5.2, there's a proclamation for National Francophone Immigration Week.
Okay, so I will read this proclamation. Whereas National Francophone Immigration Week is celebrated throughout Canada with the slogan, Building Community Through Diversity. Whereas taking note with appreciation that Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada strongly believes that attracting, integrating, and retaining French-speaking immigrants outside Quebec contributes to enhancing the vitality of communities by strengthening Canada's linguistic duality and increasing diversity within the community's provinces and territories. Whereas considering the relationship between French-speaking immigrants and the vitality of the Francophone community and the community at large of Algoma at large, and bearing in mind the positive impact that French-speaking immigrants bring to Sault Ste. Marie, now therefore I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of November 1st to November 7th, 2020, as National Francophone Immigration Week in the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you. Madam Clerk, you can proceed.
Under agenda item 5.3, it's Twin Pad Arena and McMeekin Center. Franco Pastore, the principal architect and designer of IDEA Inc. is in attendance, and that is with respect to agenda item 7.3.1.
Okay, so we have a presentation at 5.3, and then we have 7.3.1, which is the staff report, and 7.3.12, which is the Twin Pad Arena McMeekin Center replacement long-term debt review. So there's a few items on our agenda. Mr. Ver, you're on the line here. Mr. CEO, you're on the line too. Is Mr. Pastore doing this presentation for us?
I will be doing a portion of the presentation.
Okay, so Mr. Ver, are we starting with you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just introduce, obviously, as the clerk just indicated, Franco Pastore is on the line, and we've been working with his firm, IDEA, as well as a team of consultants to present the Twin Pad Arena as currently designed. As well, I have some follow-on slides at the end of his presentation with some of the summary information for council as well. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pastore.
Thank you, Tom. May I ask, Madison, if you could put up the slideshow, and I believe you were going to make me a presenter so that I can point.
Mr. Pastore, if you share your screen.
Okay. Oh, so you'd like me to run the presentation?
Certainly, or the deputy clerk can run it for you if you prefer.
Why don't you do that? I think it may be easier.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you for having us. I guess good afternoon or early evening as it gets dark. I have with me today as well Jeanette Beeman. She's a partner at IDEA Inc. She will be presenting a portion of this presentation. If you can flip to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we are here today to present an update with respect to the project, particularly the scope of project. I will speak a little bit to the design of the project, and we will give you a summary of project costs. So when I refer to the project, we are referring to the full project that was developed over a period of the last 12 months. It began in November of 2019 and reached substantial completion, at least the design did, in June of 2020. And at that time, we sort of parked until we heard back from ISIP, the ISIP application. Having received a notice that the city was not successful in its application, we now bring forward not only this presentation to give you an understanding of the full scope of project, but also to describe to you some options, I guess, go forward strategies that are available to you so that the project may proceed accordingly. If you could flip to the next slide, please. In terms of the process, I've mentioned the project began in November of 19, and it underwent a series of design phases. So schematic design, design development were initially the two phases whereby community input was sought and incorporated into the design. And then at that point, the project moved into construction documents, which are the technical documents that are going to be circulated to the construction industry for pricing at the next stage. So the project design and construction documents are complete on the full project. The project is a reflection of the input received by all stakeholders. I mentioned that there were a number of stakeholders. There were independent meetings held with the project steering committee and the Sault Ste. Marie Accessibility Advisory Committee, and more than one meeting with those two groups. And however, we did have a town hall with the Greyhounds, Thunderbirds, Sault Ringette Association, Sault Women's Hockey League, Sault Female Hockey, Lake Superior Figure Skating Club, Sault Major Hockey Association, and Sault Pee Wee Hockey League. So this was held over at the Green for Life Memorial Gardens. All input received was then incorporated into the project. So it's fair to say that the project scope and design incorporates what the community feels is an appropriate mix of spaces and programs for that facility. If you can flip, please. So in summary, just to describe what the scope of this project contains, it's a building that's approximately 85,000 square feet. It's essentially referred to as twin pad expansion of the existing Northern Community Center located on Gooley Avenue. So the project contains two NHL-sized ice pads, accessible change rooms, approximately 10, 5 for each rink. Two of them are enhanced for accessibility. Two accessible referee change rooms. We have spectator seating associated with both ice pads, one of them being more prominent, a 750 seat spectator seating. I refer to it as the B Arena, whereas the other is a 300 seat, much like what you have at the John Rhodes Community Center. There are community meeting rooms, gathering areas for the community and or during events that may occur at that facility. There are elevated barrier-free lobby and viewing into both rinks. There's standing seating areas for viewing to both rinks. There's food and beverage. Although there is a concession in the existing facility, there's a satellite concession located on level 2 of this facility. Obviously, public washrooms and universal washrooms. There's refrigeration equipment to service both ice pads. I'll speak to those a little bit later. There is a small pro shop, skate sharpening area, ticket office, and storage, under bleacher storage. So the walking track is something that's also included but identified as a separate price option. The contractors will be preparing a separate price not included in the base bid, so that if you choose to incorporate that walking track, you can, providing the project is on budget. I should say that the level of accessibility that's achieved through this design is heightened, because it not only complies to the Ontario Building Code, it also complies to FAD, which are Facility Accessible Design Standards that aren't in the building code. As well, it's been designed for Paralympic standards, so sledge hockey and other arena or ice events. And it incorporates good design practice for recreation, leisure, and active sports. So some of the features incorporated that respond to the accessibility are synthetic skate flooring that provides access or sledge hockey access from the change rooms to the benches and onto the ice. We have a zero threshold ice level, meaning that sledge hockey equipment can just slide right on from the coaching area or from the players' benches. We have viewing glass in the boards that allows any like small children or anyone in a sledge to see the ice from behind the boards or the dasher boards. We have door operators into the facility. We have 2 fully accessible sledge hockey change rooms. We have 3% of the total occupancy dedicated to barrier-free viewing through platforms and or providing ramps to elevated areas. As I mentioned, we have universal washrooms and areas of refuge at exit stairs to provide extra level of safety for people in wheelchairs that are on level 2, as well as paved exit paths that extend from exit doors to safe areas outside of the building. So it is been sort of designed to anticipate, use by people with varying levels of ability. And that's a really good thing. It's an enhanced feature of this facility. In terms of sustainability, we do have mechanical equipment or refrigeration equipment that allows us to capitalize on the waste heat that's being produced from that equipment, and we reuse that for heating various parts of the facility. We also have designed this facility so that you have the ability in the future to add solar panels. Both the NCC and this facility can take on solar panels, providing that the infrastructure is on Gooley Avenue to support that. If you can flip to the next slide, please. So this slide gives you a bit of context with respect to where the new twin pad is located relative to the existing NCC. You can see the 2 indoor turf or soccer fields, and the space surrounding it is the existing NCC. The 2 pads are quite visible with change rooms in between and bleacher seating. So the pad to the left I will refer to as Ice Pad 1 and the one on the right as Ice Pad 2. And the space that separates the existing facility from the new twin pad is a public space. It's a lobby that connects both to the existing NCC and to basically the 2 ice pads themselves. I should mention that in 2009, we developed a master plan for this site that included a twin pad expansion or a twin pad component to the original NCC. So that is one of the reasons we can accommodate this facility easily on this site. The infrastructure has been built to support a twin pad. Since then, you've done demand analysis to confirm that an additional pad is required in this community. So it sort of confirms not only the replacement of the existing McMeekin, but the addition of a new pad. The original project attempted to construct the twin pad with stimulus funding at the time. It was intended to move forward as a single project back in 2009. However, the city was not successful in its application for stimulus. So the project moved forward with only one stage or phase, which is the original or the existing NCC. Had at the time the project or the city received funding, it would have moved forward with what you see here on the screen. So the twin pad was always anticipated for this site. If you can go to the next. So this slide shows you the before and after snapshot of that site, the Northern Community Center. So at the top, you can see the new facility, the NCC, with the McMeekin. The intent here is to construct the new twin pad just north of the existing NCC and then ultimately remove the McMeekin and expand that parking lot or the site northerly towards Cork Collegiate. The infrastructure for that NCC was designed to anticipate the second stage, both in terms of expanding the parking lots, expanding the lobby and circulation system from within that building, and also expanding the mechanical electrical infrastructure that's within that building to tie into the new infrastructure associated with this NCC or with the twin pad. You can go to the next slide, please. So the project this is level 1 of the twin pad, and it contains 2 ice pads. Ice pad 1 is the B arena, or the 750 spectator seat facility. It also has change rooms that support it. So there are 5 change rooms essentially on that side of the corridor. You can see in the center there's a corridor that feeds 2 sets of change rooms, or 2 groups of change rooms, with referee change rooms located on either end. The yellow areas represent the public areas. So there is a new lobby located between the existing NCC and the new twin pad. And once you move into each of the 2 ice pad areas, you have access to bleacher seating. So in the ice pad number 1, you can access the bleachers from the lowest level, from the ice pad level, but they extend all the way up to level 2 above those change rooms. Whereas in ice pad number 2, there's only 300 seats, much like what you have at the John Rhodes, and you cannot access level 2 at that location. You can move to the next, please. So this is a bird's eye view that illustrates the same. You can see the yellow highlight is the new lobby. This lobby is a corridor system that provides access to both rinks, but also ties into the existing NCC. You can see how it tees in at that location, at which point there's an existing concession area that serves the entire facility. You can see the bleachers. There's concourses or vomitories, they call them, that provide access from the change room areas right out onto the ice pad for hockey players or anybody using the ice, and as well as there's full accessibility to the bleachers from that level. You can go to the next one, please. So this is level 2 of that, and from the main lobby, you can access an upper lobby, and that upper lobby provides access to a concourse. So the concourse is, if you can see the doors on the left between the upper lobby and the bleacher area, there's a platform immediately as you enter that provides barrier-free viewing. But the concourse itself is the corridor that is situated between the bleachers and all of the community rooms that are shaded in the pink. So that concourse also, if you are to build the walking track, would continue on around the perimeter of ice pad 1 at level 2, surrounding that ice pad. So you can use that for, obviously, as a walking track. It supports activity, running, walking, but it can also be used for spectator viewing at times when there's an ice event. So anywhere along the perimeter edge of that, one can stand and watch. The upper lobby obviously has an elevator that provides access to level 1. And the second floor, located directly above those change rooms, are a number of community rooms. So these are multi-purpose rooms that have the ability to be subdivided or open completely up to the events area where the ice pad is. There's large overhead doors that can slide open and then support tournament play or any type of event that requires those rooms to support it, or they can be accessed independently and used for private functions. Right in the center, there's a viewing area that provides both visual to ice pad number 1 as well as to ice pad number 2. So this is more of a sort of a lounge area that is open to both sides visually, and there are no walls around obviously the top edge there where it boundaries onto ice pad number 1. The idea is during tournament or any event that you can serve food and beverage in that location. It's supported by a small kitchenette or a concession directly to the right, as well as a universal washroom. Then there's another multi-purpose room to the right of that, and then some staff facilities beyond that point. You can go to the next slide. This is a 3D or bird's eye view of that second floor level, and from here you can see the concourse in yellow, and as it connects to the walking track, that's sort of that tan color surrounding ice pad number 1. You can also appreciate in this view the connection from the concourse to the bleachers. Both, again, those bleachers are accessible both from the ice pad level or from the concourse level. And that concourse provides access to all of the community rooms that are located along the length of it. You can go to the next slide. So this is a building section that shows the opportunity that's created where the change rooms are. Essentially, you can create a two-story building at that location, whereas the arenas require 30 feet clearance. You have the building height and volume to allow those community rooms to occur in an efficient manner. You can also see on the left side, Ice Pad 1, the 750 seats and how they can be accessible both at level 1 and level 2 with the 300 seats on the right-hand side, Ice Pad number 2. Okay, you can go to the next one. So these are exterior renderings of the project that can give you sort of describe the characteristic of the new addition relative to the existing building in terms of the overall size. And you can see here that there's a drop-off lane that's been created along the length of the face of the building. This is for access, buses bringing players during tournament play or even city transit. The intent is to have a bus stop along that length. We also have all the accessible parking located on the west side of the building, so there's direct access onto a walking area that leads to the new main entrance. And you can see the main entrance just left of what is the library or senior center in the foreground there. So this is the new entrance to the facility. This project always anticipated providing a new lobby and new entrance for the entire facility. The original NCC has an entrance, its own entrance. However, it's directly into a corridor space, whereas this project provides the proper sort of lobby area, call it, the facility's living room, to service the entire facility. The sketch on the bottom shows the extent of new expansion versus existing and the general materiality and height of this building. It is a modest building in terms of its overall design. It's pleasant but modest, recognizing that there is a tight budget on this project. You can go to the next slide. So this slide will show you views from different vantage points. Again, you can see the main entrance on the picture look on the bottom of the screen, and how it connects to barrier-free parking, and essentially this driveway that's located along the length of the building is where all the drop-off activity would occur. There is an anticipation to have city transit and a bus stop located where you see the group of people standing there. There are 20 spaces provided for accessible parking, whereas the bylaw only calls for 9. So that's one of the improvements that we have on this project. You can go to the next slide. So the next slide illustrates the new main entrance of the facility, and the intent here is to animate, the interior, the activity that's going on to the parking lot in the street. It becomes obvious that this is the main entrance, whereas right now you almost have to look for that main entrance to the NCC. The lobby is an important space because it's sort of where people will collect and most of the activity will occur. So this slide shows you the characteristics of that space. It's 2-story. It connects on your right. You can see a set of doors that connect into the existing NCC. But when you're in that space, you can also view the activities that are on the ice at Ice Pad number 1. It is heated viewing. This lobby also has access stairs and elevators to the upper lobby that you can see in the distance there. That then provides access to the bleachers and the community rooms. So again, it's a modest space. However, it's very functional and very necessary at this facility. It's important to note that we've had consultation with the Cultural Advisory Committee as well to identify and opportunities for visual arts and interactive art. One of the pieces that's being considered is a projector that allows kids to interact with the content, and it's projected onto the floor. It could be a hockey rink, it could be a soccer field, and you know, they're able to kick the ball or hit the puck with their foot. It is a pretty exciting technology, and we would definitely encourage those kind of things to populate this kind of space. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeanette in the project management capacity. She's been managing the cost, and so she'll be able to take you through this piece.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jeanette Beeman, and thanks for inviting us today for this presentation. As Franco mentioned, I'll walk you through the cost estimating process that's gone through for this project, as we do for most projects. It helps inform what we believe the projected cost for the project will be when you tender it. So when you start a project, you have fairly little information. You just kind of have a general scope. That's where you would be at schematic design or Class D estimate. As you refine the project, we get more feedback from the owners groups, and we define the working drawing set. You can advance that a little further, and we can do cost control, make adjustments along the way. So this project's gone through 2 rounds of cost estimating. The latest one was done at 50% working drawings, and that's informed the budgets that you have today. The true test of what the project will actually cost will come when you tender the project. That would be considered a Class A, and that's the actual construction cost based on the market availability of contractors and materials. So that kind of explains where we're at the current moment, and then we'll get into what the actual project costs are. So if you can flip to the next slide. So we've got this broken down into 3 steps here. The top part there, construction costs. This is what you would see on your tender from your contractors if this project was to be approved to go out for tender today. It's about a $25 million construction cost for the facility. Along with that, there are some ancillary costs, soft costs, which are fees and FF&E for the facility. And the last piece there in purple is the demolition of the McMeekin Center. So that's a project cost as well. We need to demolish the facility. There's some remediation for abatement of hazardous materials in that facility, and that's been estimated around $1 million based on the reports that have been prepared. Franco did mention earlier in the presentation that there is a separate price for a walking track. This is below the line, so it's a cost that we've developed the drawings for. At this point, the project steering committee didn't necessarily feel it was within the budget, but was something that they wanted to further explore because it was an element that was asked for a number of times. So we've estimated it's about another $1 million on top of the 28.2 that we're showing you for the project cost for this facility, the one that Franco's just described to you a moment ago. So with everything in, all the ice pads, the lobby, the community center spaces, this project is around 28.2 million, with an additional 1 million if the walking track was accepted. What we were tasked, we were all very upset, just as I'm sure you guys were when we discovered through the summer that this project didn't get approved for the ICIP funding. So we met with the project steering committee, and we were asked to look at different options. So if you flip to the next slide, we'll talk about these options that we're looking into or have looked into in terms of how you could proceed. Option 1 is proceed with the full project as it's been presented today with the budget of approximately 28 million. Another option would be to defer one of the ice pads, and I'll show you slides of each of these, which deferring means you don't build it today, but you leave the infrastructure in place, much like we did with the original NCC, such that you could expand this at a future time when you do have the budget for the additional ice pad. Option 3 would be to reduce the project. This would be scaling the project back, removing some of that infrastructure so that you actually only build a single pad. Proceeding with this option would somewhat preclude or prohibit you from building an additional ice pad if you did want to do so in the future. The fourth option was just a sort of a minor adjustment in the costing, trying not to change the facility too much. Was there simple things that could be deferred? So we looked at the community spaces on the second level. You could defer fitting them out for now and make those part of a future project when you did have a tenant or somebody that perhaps cost shared in the construction of those spaces. So that's option 4. And then option 5 is not to proceed at this time and go out and look for additional funding. So if you flip to the next slide, this will give you a little visual of what option 2 would look like. This is when you just defer ice pad. So you keep all of the lobby space. you keep the change rooms and the ice pad number 1 with all of its bleacher spaces, but really that space at the bottom, the ice pad number 2, wouldn't be constructed. So there'd be a few minor changes we'd need to make to the documents to basically build that wall as an exterior wall for now. You wouldn't necessarily do all the fit out in the 5 change rooms associated with it, but you would have the space there so that when and if you had the funds to proceed, you could easily build that second ice pad. If you flip to the next slide, please. On the second level, much of the ice pad 1 would remain exactly as shown. The bleachers and the community spaces would be there along with the washrooms that support those spaces. You really would just be removing the volume for ice pad 2. So again, there would just be an exterior wall for now, and you could easily expand that in the future. Flip to the next one. So if we were to do that, we did reach out to Hanscom, who's the third-party cost estimator who had estimated this project all the way along. We gave them sketches and drawings of things that could be removed as part of this option, and they came back with an updated construction cost. That's the 20.2 million in the blue, and we've adjusted the other items accordingly. So moving forward with this option, just deferring ice pad 2 saves you approximately 4.9 million. Now, we talked earlier about how cost estimating works. This is what I would call Class D estimate. So it's highly variable at this point. It's plus or minus probably 20% because we gave them sketches at this point, not full detailed working drawings, but it'll give you an indication of what the types of savings would be if we were to just defer that one element. We'll flip to the next one. So option 3, this is if we were to remove the second ice pad. In this case, you would actually reduce the refrigeration plant. Right now, the refrigeration plant is sized for 2 ice pads. All the piping under the slab is sized for that. The HVAC systems, electrical systems, all the major M&E systems are sized to handle 2 arenas. So in this case, you would actually not only remove the second ice pad, but actually downsize those systems. If in the future you chose to add a second ice pad, you'd basically have to duplicate some of that work. You can see here the lobby space would still need to be provided because you need circulation. You do need the 5 change rooms still to have a single ice pad. And if you go to level 2, one of the major impacts here is the community space, which we had in sort of that orangish color. It would be greatly reduced because you don't have as much, you're not building over top of the other change rooms, so it would severely limit what kind of community rooms you could have at the level 2. This facility design, if we did go forward actually with a reduced ice pad, we would probably need to completely rework these drawings because you wouldn't actually probably build it like this. We just needed to very quickly come up with some sketches so that they could cost estimate this option. So if you flip to the next one, this one is a variable cost as well. Like we said, it went to Hanscom for cost estimating. They've assumed a construction cost savings that would get you down to about 17.6 million. Once you add up all of the ancillary costs, this is a $20 million facility. The reason it's quite a bit higher than you may be thinking a single pad facility is because you're still including lobby space, you're still including some community spaces, and there's ancillary corridors that may or may not be needed. So this one is, like I say, a plus or minus 25% accuracy. That being said, it does give you an indication of what a single facility would be attached to this community center. If you move to the next one, this option, we really just looked at deferring the fit up at level 2. So those spaces, those community rooms, the interactive community spaces, you would still need to build them. The volume of the space would still be there, but you wouldn't actually put in all of the fit out. So the walls, the doors, the overhead doors, the kitchen space, concession, a lot of that would be deferred. So the volume of the space would be there, and then when you had the funds, or if you had a vendor, somebody that wanted to operate out of the space, they could then come in and cost share with you in the construction of that space. Looking at the savings for this, it's certainly quite a bit less. If you look at the next one, the cost projected saving right there at the bottom is approximately 300,000. So although that is a significant amount of money, in the overall project scheme, it is not as sizable a savings if you're looking to cut the construction costs down quite a bit. In all of these options, you'll notice on the left, the walking track of $1 million has been preserved. So if it is something that the council and community really do want to have, you can add that back in any of the options if that's a preferred. A lot of this becomes a trade-off. What's the most valuable aspect of this project to this community? And if you look at the next one, this kind of puts them all side by side. So option one, again, just as a reminder, was the 28.2 million, and the other options, options 2, 3, and 4, have all been put side by side. So you can see the savings for option 2. This is the defer, was 4.9 million. Option 1, deleting the rink, was approximately a savings of 7.4, and the deferring the fit up saves you 300,000. Now that could be applied to any of them. You could add that 300,000 savings to option 2 or 3 to sort of enhance the amount there. I guess each of these were presented back through the committee to look at, and I think that's where Tom will take over. I've got one more slide here that just talks about sort of the go forward if council was to proceed with one of these options, sort of what it looks like in terms of construction. So a tender process for a project of this size is approximately 6 weeks. If you guys were to proceed with option 1, which is the full project, you could do that early in the new year, allowing for a spring construction. And then we've estimated the construction time window for a project of this size to be between 14 and 16 months. If you were to go to option 2, you could probably reduce that slightly because the construction project would be a little bit less. And even more so with option 3, the construction window, again, would be 12 to 14 months because the facility gets a bit smaller, but there are certain elements that do take a significant amount of time. So it doesn't cut your cost, nor does it cut your time in half. It just reduces it slightly. Option 4 is, again, similar in terms of construction window because we've assumed that that would be applied to the first option or second. At this point, I think I'll turn it back to Tom and he can talk about the other aspects of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Jeanette. Appreciate that. So we put together some slides as we discussed them with the Twin Pad Arena Committee and to present to council to summarize some of the key points from the report. So the first one looks at the debt summary for the facility. So currently the city would be eligible to receive rates of 2.14%, and we would look to amortize the facility over a period of 25 years. The debt retiring from the GFL Memorial Gardens and John Rhodes provides some room in the debt servicing fees, if you will, and frees $1.6 million in debt servicing as of 2022. And CFO Shell has also provided a report with some additional information for council to consider as it relates to the debt situation with the city overall. Next slide, please, Madison. So in terms of the options that Jeanette went through, a quick summary, the Twin Pad, the full project is $28.2 million. The debt servicing for that project would be approximately $1.46 million. Option 2, to defer one of the pads with a cost of $23.3 million, there would be $1.2 million in annual debt servicing. So about $255,000 difference from the full Twin Pad project. Option 3, a single pad coming in at approximately $20.8 million. The debt servicing for that would be $1.07 million. And then option 4 can be applied to any of the projects if we wanted to look at cost savings. Next slide talks about for all the options, if council were to proceed, there would be no impact to the levy. The considerations obviously would have to be taken into account for other future projects that council wanted to consider for the city. But the debt servicing for the full Twin Pad project and obviously the lesser projects would fall under the amount that we are paying for the John Rhodes and the GFL Memorial Gardens. Also, another key point with the Twin Pad is that we don't anticipate increased operations budget for a couple of reasons. Number one is we can transfer the McMeekin budget over to that new facility, but the new Twin Pad facility also will have a longer season because we only run the McMeekin when the weather gets cold due to the condition of the building. So we'll be able to open up the new facility earlier in the season and run it later in the year, potentially running one pad throughout the summer if we so chose. And there'll be increased revenues associated with that. So that helps to offset some of the additional costs of that Twin Pad facility. The next slide, we look at the cost differential. So when we sat back and looked at it with the committee, really the differential between the projects, relatively speaking, is not that substantial when you're looking at a $28.2 million project versus 23.9 if you deferred one of the twin pads. Even 20 million if we went to a single pad option. Also, a key point was the currently almost historical low interest rates that provide favorable interest rates for this project. And a key point obviously was that the demand, going back to the start really in 2017 when we hired Leisure Plan to do the analysis of ice time utilization, comprehensive report produced for council, it was clearly shown that there is demand for this twin pad facility in Sault Ste. Marie. And that was demand that existed even with all the other facilities up and running. And we know some of our other community facilities are getting older as well. So that creates even more of a concern, if you will, to have all the ice pads operational. The next slide talked about the funding. So currently we have not found any funding programs, additional programs that would support a significant build like this. The provincial government and the federal government have not announced the recipients of the ISIP Recreation and Culture Stream in Ontario at this point. So that still has to happen. And so there's no new programs that have been launched. And the traditional funding sources, say an NOHFC and FedNor, do not fund this type of facility. There may be opportunities as we look at things like energy funding programs and that kind of thing. There may be opportunities to find some funding for the project, but we have not found anything substantial at this point. Obviously, a concern for staff as it relates to the facility that is existing, the McMeekin Arena, is the condition of that arena. And we want to make sure we continue to provide good service levels to the ice using public. So, the Twin Pad Committee looked at the do nothing option really isn't a cost-free option either, because it's estimated that the facility at the McMeekin needs at least $3 million in the coming years. And certainly if we had a large failure, there would be a significant cost. At that point, you probably wouldn't want to put money into an old facility, and you would be looking at losing an ice pad and the impact of that across all the user groups in the community. The other point we talked about was if we delay the second pad, the cost to build at a future date will likely be higher, as we've seen in the past with other projects. Another key point that I wanted to mention related to this is that if we are able to go out to tender on a project soon, what that will do is if we move fast, we will actually be out in front of all the other ISIP projects when they are announced. And that could have a significant impact as it relates to the costs that we receive back from the construction companies related to this facility. So as those projects aren't announced, we might be able to get some advantage by going out early and getting this project tendered at this stage in the game. And next slide, please. So given all of that analysis, as we discussed with staff in the Twin Pad Committee, the recommendation from the committee is to proceed with option one, which would be the full Twin Pad project, and utilize debt financing to fund the project. Just to give council an idea of the timeline of that project on the next slide, the tender process would be 6 weeks, run from November into January. Construction for a Twin Pad facility would be 14 to 16 months, as indicated by our consultants. So that would take us when spring starts in May 2021 through to September 2022. The demolition would take place in those summer months in 2022. So what that also means is that we will be required to run the McMeekin for 2 more seasons. So this is an arena that's over 50 years old now, and as council is aware, has faced issues annually in operating. So our hope would be we can make that decision soon, get this project tendered so that we'll have the minimum time left with the McMeekin Arena and be able to move into the new facility as soon as construction's completed in 2022. So to summarize, it's certainly recognized, the next slide, that the Twin Pad is a significant investment on the part of the city of Sault Ste. Marie. The city has certainly put in significant amount of effort and staff and the Twin Pad Committee to get to this point. And I think Franco pointed out today that a twin pad was envisioned in 2009 when the soccer pitches were constructed. And certainly in 2017, 3 years ago, when we started the ice utilization study, we spent a lot of time to look at what's required in the community. What are the demand of our user groups, that being hockey, ringette, figure skating, and put together the plan for this facility. We weighed the different options and concluded there is an opportunity to proceed at this time. The debt servicing costs for the twin pad project are below the retiring debt service costs and won't result in an impact to the levy. And the interest rate at 2.14%, and potentially even lower by the time we go to market with this project, are beneficial at this time. Some smaller points, obviously the project will generate construction jobs in the near term and will help us to attract tournaments and events in the future. And we know the demand for ice time, probably the most important point, has been clearly documented and exists with all the current community arenas in operation. So for those reasons, the committee really recommends that we move forward with that twin pad option. We believe it's an exciting project and certainly a project that's going to serve the community very well in the future and meet the demands of our users and be a successful project for Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you.
I apologize. I was on mute. I think that wraps up the presentation. I've had a number of counselors, if not all of you, reach out to me during the presentation, telling me that you had questions or comments. I'm going to get to those. Would I suggest that I'm going to go to all the counselors that have questions, but you're free to make your comments when I get to you. But if you make your comments, I won't be coming back to you. So if you just want to ask a couple questions, I'll come back to you after for a comment. But if when you're on your time, you make your comments as well as your questions, I won't be circling back to you, so I'll be keeping a list. You are welcome to ask questions of staff on this, and you are welcome to ask questions of the consultants who are on the line. I want to thank both Franco and Jeanette for making themselves available to us tonight. I also want to point out that our CFO Shelley Shell is also on the line, and you have the report in front of you about the debt financing, and this would also be the time to ask questions if you had questions about that. So I am going to start with the first counselor to text me, which was Paul Christian. Counselor Christian, you are up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can hear me okay?
I can, very clearly.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the presenters. It was a very thorough presentation. I apologize if I sound a little shaky. I have a cold. And by the way, I was tested. I came back negative. But I guess my first question would be to CFO Shelley Shell. Michelle, you provided the debt servicing requirements over the next few years. I just want to clarify something under the one heading, debt servicing requirements. The level as of December 31st, 2019 was 1.4, which provides for approximately $5 million in additional debt servicing room. What would be the actual dollar amount in total with the additional $5 million? What's the total debt room we have, or debt servicing room, I mean? Is it 6.5% or 6.5 million?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking what our total debt servicing is available?
Yes.
Okay.
According to our debt management policy.
Yes. So we're at 1.4%,
right,
as of December 31st, 2019.
Yeah.
So if we go up to 5% as per our debt management policy, it leaves approximately an additional $5 million of debt servicing.
Right. So 5
On
million
top of
plus
what's there already, sorry.
So what's the total dollar amount then? 5 million plus what's current?
Plus what's current, yes.
What is the current? I can't remember.
I just want to make sure I give you the accurate number.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
be the $5 million
Yeah.
plus the approximately $1.7 million of current debt servicing
Okay.
that is in there. Now that's just the city portion. When we calculate the total debt servicing, it includes also the PUC, and there's several million dollars worth of debt for the water side of the PUC that's also included in there.
Right. Okay. So you provided a list of other items that we're going to have to consider. New fire hall, downtown plaza. Can you give us an approximation, if we went ahead with all of those, what the debt servicing for all of those projects would be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, the approximate amount would be about $3.5 million. Now, some of those projects,
Yeah.
3.5 on top of what's already being committed to the arena, if you go that route.
Okay.
So it's 3.5 just for those projects alone.
Right.
And that again is assuming the 2.14% interest and various assumptions on the terms of each of those debt loads.
Right.
Of that 3.5, approximately 2.8 is already included within our growth allocation for the downtown plaza, as well as sanitary sewer revenue will cover the debt requirements for any kind of the sanitary sewer projects. So that leaves approximately $650,000 of anticipated long-term debt. Now, again, the fire hall hasn't been approved.
Right.
The estimate is a very high-level estimate that was in the fire master plan. And it's unknown at this time whether there'll be other projects that are coming forward through this council or others that may require long-term debt. So that remains, we require approximately $650,000 additional amount on the levy to service future debt. So hence my recommendation that if we are going to go down this road, I recommend that we start adding on an annual basis additional funds into the asset management plan so that there isn't a levy impact in 1 year only.
Sure. And I apologize because you and I have had conversations about accounting before. So I just need, I'm not an expert at this. But so what you're suggesting then, if I understand you, is with all of this stuff coming down, you're suggesting that when we do the pluses and the minuses, we're looking at an additional 650,000 additional dollars of debt servicing through the levy over the next few years. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, yes, that is correct. That's additional amounts that will have to go on the levy. Again,
Right.
This is very, very high level because
Right.
we don't know what some of these projects are going to cost, but I wanted to be able to provide council a guideline as to what may be occurring. One thing that should be noted as well is that all of the debt that is being retired, it's all related to community centers as well.
Yeah, that I understand. So the 3.5 that you initially mentioned was a gross amount, and when we make the adjustments and the accommodations for revenues and other sorts of things, we're 650,000 in additional levy.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And really that, I guess I'll make my comments now, Mr. Mayor. I had several questions about the actual presentation and the facility itself. I think Mr. Pastore and Associates did a great job of explaining it. I'm struggling with this because I know of our financial situation in the city, the demographics, it's well documented. I look at a $28 million price tag. And my experience with these things, especially when it's so early on in the planning, is that it's not going to be the price. When I looked at this, I added the 15%. And I see a price tag of at least $32 million. But having said that, even if you do the financing at the current rates, it's a wash with our current debt. I think it's 1.6 million additional on the levy, which would be a wash with the current amount that we owe now. I'm struggling with this though. It's a big price tag. I know the city needs it. And I don't see any advantage in scaling down the project. I guess it's difficult at this time too, because there's so many unknowns, even the additional projects that we're going to have to deal with. Many of them haven't been finalized. So we're making estimates and we're guessing. And as I said, even with the arena itself, the price tag hasn't been finalized. So I'm reserving my decision right now. I want to hear what other councillors have to say. I know we need the project. I know we need the facility, but we have to do the prudent thing because we're representing all of Sault Ste. Marie and especially all the taxpayers. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Christian. Next, I have Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have one quick question for Ms. Beeman, if I could, just because I think I missed one piece of what she had mentioned. Ms. Beeman, were the potential variances in the cost of the project for option 1, did you say 5 to 10%, and for option 2, 10 to 20%?
So yeah, I'll touch on that a little bit. The base project, the $28.2 million main project, that one's gone all the way to the end of the working drawings phase. So we actually have a fairly good estimate of that project. That one would be more likely plus or minus 10%. The other options, they're very high level sketches. Those are more likely plus or minus 20% in the variances.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, I and fellow councilors, I sat on the arena committee and I understand fully the need for additional ice here in the Soo. I, like Councillor Christian, I'm struggling with it, and I'm struggling because despite the very detailed information provided by staff, I'm having a hard time thinking about spending $30 million on an arena right now. Especially in light of the pandemic and any shortages we might experience in the future because of it, because we would be acting against our own budget policy, which we recently established, along with knowing, the infrastructure deficit we face and some of the project outlined for us in this report, which we'll have to commit some significant resources to in the very near future. I frankly think I need a bit more time, and I, like Councillor Christian, I'll echo his comments about looking forward to hear what my colleagues have to say, Mr. Mayor, because personally, I think this is a pretty big decision. But I don't want us to forget how and why we're here, and having to deliberate whether to spend tens of millions of dollars on our own to build an arena. One that we need due to the fact that the McMeekin itself is beyond being able to operate efficiently, but further because of the age of many of the other arenas in our community and our surrounding area. And even though we have accurate data to support that we require such a facility, we're here at this point considering building this ourselves because we didn't get the support that we were seeking. Now, I don't want to question Mr. Romano's effort or his influence when it comes to being the member of parliament, provincial parliament for Sault Ste. Marie, nor do I want to question that effort or influence as a member of Mr. Ford's cabinet. But I'm getting close to it. And the reason I'm getting close to questioning it is that over the last while, I feel that we've seen a lack of support from the provincial government for vital work that we've been pursuing and infrastructure we require. As a corporation, we deduced, as previously mentioned, that we required this arena. We put forward our application to the province. They turned us down, when I am quite confident that we had met criteria that would have received federal support for the project. As a result, we're faced with the burden of carrying this alone. And when it comes to a simultaneous epidemic, that of drug addiction and mental health, simultaneous to the one we're currently facing, The community writ large, with the backing of the corporation of the city of Sault Ste. Marie, asked this provincial government repeatedly for funding to assist in building a center for withdrawal management, so we could effectively treat patients struggling with substance abuse, especially opioid abuse, so they could get the help they desperately need. And what do we hear out of Queen's Park? Nothing more than, I'd say, essentially, thanks for the request. But who we all around this table hear from are the people in the community with legitimate concerns as to how these challenges impact the Sault Ste. Marie, not only in the health of our citizens, but in what we hear about leading to crime in and around our community. We get calls and emails often about it. We hear about it in the media. The Sault Ste. Marie Police Services express frustration. Most importantly, we hear from family members who are extremely concerned, distressed about their loved ones not getting the assistance, the care they need, and also from health professionals who treat them. In the meantime, people continue to struggle. They continue to die, both young and old alike. When it comes to the Future Sault Ste. Marie initiative that we established, which is doing great work, unprecedented work, I'd say in some cases, working to create opportunity for young people, recruiting people to settle in our community to address our labor shortages, efforts to create a more vibrant, engaging community. What does Mr. Ford and his government do? They cut the funding. I said at a previous council meeting that we can't always count on other levels of government to move our community forward. But when it comes to the community's highest priorities, whether they be for cultural and recreational infrastructure, dealing with our most critical health crisis, which pre-existed COVID-19, and a community initiative to help address our most significant challenges, we should be getting support from the province for at least one or two of them. We aren't for any of them. And personally, I think it's a shame. And the question I have to ask is why we're not. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garvey. They were very substantive. Appreciated. Next on my list is Councillor Hilsinger.
Mayor, I have a question to Mr. Ver. Can you provide, I appreciate the comments with regards to the attractiveness and sort of this facility being able to attract visitation from outside the community and what that, what that does from a revenue perspective for us. Is there any further details that you can share with us on, even estimates, what that could be expected to be that we can't do now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger. I'll have to come back to you with those numbers. I do know that, we work with the Tourism Sault Ste. Marie staff prior to them migrating in as we were developing the plan and the amenities of the facility and what would be required for the community. And at that time, they had put together, a summary that looked at the types of events and tournaments that we are trying to attract and how this facility would help to do that. But unfortunately, I don't have those numbers here in front of me. I'll have to get back to you on that.
I think it would be really helpful for all of us to, to get a sense of what that could potentially, and there's no guarantees, I get that, but just sort of, and certainly next year, not much is happening. But the point being, thinking about it, it might help everybody with their decision. Thank you.
Okay, so is that the extent of your questions, Councillor Hilsinger? Yes. Okay, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions, and I'll be jumping all over. But to Jake, was Nancy Scott ever contacted? She's the coordinator for the Accessibility Community Development Enterprise. So was she contacted at all when you were doing the drawings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. Yeah, Jake's my brother. I'll say hi to him for you.
Oh, my apologies.
No
Franco,
problem.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, we did consult with the Accessibility Committee a few times. So we did present to them and receive input, quite detailed input from them.
Okay. And when was this estimated, this total project? Was it like several months ago or was it a month ago?
Jeanette, can I ask you to respond to that?
Yes, certainly. So we did reach out to Hanscom, that's a third-party cost estimator, in the summer, so May of 2020. And the estimates, the latest estimates that you have for these various options, those were provided only a month ago. At that time, we did ask them to comment on the estimate that they had provided earlier in the year and asked if they saw any substantial change to it due to the current climate in terms of market change. And they said they didn't anticipate there, or they couldn't have, they didn't have any substantial reason to estimate that it would be different at this point. So I'd say it's only a month old in terms of the estimates we presented tonight.
Yeah. Well, I think building costs have gone up in the last 2, 3, 4 months. Just knowing by buying material for myself, but
But the
that's
competitive,
fine.
the market, yeah, the competitiveness of the market's also impacted as well. So certainly
Okay.
that was a consideration.
Okay, to Mr. Pastor again, regarding the entrance. So the library or the Northern Community Center will have a separate entrance than
Good.
the 2 ice pads, or will
Right.
they? Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, yes, there is an entrance located on the south side of the library soccer facility that can provide direct access to that facility if it needs to operate independently. The
Mhm.
new entrance will provide direct access to the ice pads and the hockey arena, but the two corridor systems connect. So there is a set of doors that would allow you to, access control between the two facilities. But for the most part, there are 2, separate entrances to this facility.
Okay. Regarding the John Rhodes, what is the seating capacity of the would be, I guess, number 2? Which one has more seating capacity, one or two? John Rhodes, 1 or 2?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, I believe it's number 2, and I vaguely recall that was approximately 350 seats located on the south side against where the restaurant is.
Okay, and we're looking at maximum capacity of 700.
750 in
750?
one and 300 in the other, not
Okay.
including the viewing from the concourse level or from
Right.
those multi-purpose rooms.
Okay, for the multi-purpose rooms, is there a capacity number that can fit in there? Just
There is. I don't have it in front of me,
okay,
but it's quite substantial. Yes.
okay. One thing I wish the committee and yourself implemented, especially at the Northern Community Center. Right now, we have many walkers that use the facility, especially the indoor soccer facility. I think it would be imperative to include it in the drawings that a track is available for our seniors. Especially during the winter, it is used quite a bit.
Yeah, so if I can comment on that, the drawings of this facility do include a walking track. They're 100% complete construction documents for that walking track.
Mhm.
It's located on level 2, so it overlooks the ice pad. When and if this project goes out for tender or pricing, you will receive a separate price option for that walking track. So in other words, if you choose, you can add it to the contract. If you choose not to, then you would strictly just move forward with the base contract, which is the balance of the project.
Okay, thank you. My next question is to Michelle regarding the additional levy. So if we went forward with this project, and I just want to get a clear understanding, an additional $650,000 will be put on the levy. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, if all of the other projects that are noted in my report also occur at the levels that they're noted as well, then that would be the additional amount of levy that we would require over and above what is currently included in the budget at this time for debt servicing.
Okay, and if you put it in a percentage, what would the percentage be? Or is that too difficult to calculate?
The percentage of new debt servicing or the
Yes.
total?
Well, for the tax levy.
Oh, it'd be about 650, so it'd be less than 1%.
So less than 1%. Okay. Okay, I'll just give you my comments, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think this is an exciting time to have a twin pad. Unfortunately, I don't think it's the right time to have this built, especially we're going through a pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen in a year's time. We don't know what our tax levy will be for our residents of Sault Ste. Marie. We're going to come up the budget shortly. I just have a concern that will the burden be back to the taxpayers? What I deferred for a year, I have no problems deferring it for one more year to see what happens to Sault Ste. Marie in a year's time, especially with the pandemic. I know costs will go up, but I don't want to see a project scaled down as the John Rhodes was, as the GFL was. I believe this model is an excellent model, with the exception of there's no track included in the price, but it'll come back at approximately $1 million. I think we need that for our seniors that use the Northern Community Center on a regular basis, and especially in the wintertime. But I don't think this is the opportune time to move forward. If we can send it out for a price and it comes back, maybe we can review and maybe have further dialogue on it. It might come back lower than anticipated, which I probably think it won't, but you never know. So I'll leave it at that. So I'm not in favor of the project to go forward at this time. Thanks.
So council, I've got quite a list here, so I'm just going to ask you all to be mindful as we move forward about the rules of procedure that govern us, and that we do have a limitation on the amount of time each of us are supposed to take. Just so I want to get to the end of this process so we can have a discussion about it. Councillor Bezuwelen, I have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver. Tom, the study for the ice time was done back in 2017. Have you done any update to that in terms of what the need for ice time is now and potentially what it will be going into 2021 based on the assumptions that will still be in the current restrictions that we will be in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezuwelen, we haven't done an update to that. However, what we have seen is that because a number of ice users in Sault Ste. Marie were using ice facilities in Sault, Michigan, that option is no longer available to them. So in fact, the COVID situation has increased demand for ice time in our community because they're no longer able to use ice time in Sault, Michigan.
In terms of return of investment, especially as we're doing concessions and with the seating, at this point, have you done any sort of work into what that would look like based on physical distancing, the maximum capacity under current regulations, and as far as, you know, even the amount of people that we can serve in concessions moving forward, say realistically the next 2 to 3 years of operations potentially?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezuwelen. We have been working closely with Algoma Public Health in our current facilities at the John Rhodes and in the, well, really in the John Rhodes at this point, soon to be the McMeekin, and as well the GFL Memorial Gardens when that opens. So we have a view of operationally how we can handle that and how we can support the users. It is a decreased model as the the ice leagues themselves. The hockey leagues, for example, have implemented rules and guidelines for the parents in terms of the number of spectators and the number of users that can be in the arena at any one time.
My other question is, in March 2019, we approved 1.1 million in short-term funding for preliminary design work. Do you know where we're at in terms of that expenditure with this project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, we did check that number. We're currently just under the threshold that council had approved for the project.
And my other question is for Ms. Bierman regarding additional costs if we went for a different option in terms of design. If we didn't go for the full project and say we went for one of the other options.
Yes, sorry. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Councillor Vezo-Allen. In terms of redesign the facility, if you were to go to the option where we needed to go to a single pad, that's not the deferred option, but a complete redesign, there certainly would be design costs because the project has moved and we're already at the end of working drawings. We had included a bit of an estimate there for the project steering committee to look at, but until we knew exactly the direction council wanted to take, we haven't really costed that out to its fullest extent.
Could you earmark, like, just give me a rough estimate? Is it 100,000? Is it 250,000? Is it 500,000? Just so my colleagues and I have some sort of ballpark with that, what that would be.
Yes, certainly that information is in the soft cost line item of the presentation. I was going to see if I could pull it back up unless somebody else has it handy. It should be in the soft cost line item associated with that project option.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll look that up. Thank you. And my only other question is for Ms. Schell. So just to be clear, Ms. Schell, currently our debt management policy recommends 60% of the entire project cost to be financed. So we would be having to ask for an exception on that policy and have it at 100%?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. Yes, staff follows the recommendations of the policy, but council can make an exception if they agree to that and allow for the 100% debt financing.
And just to reiterate, the impact of this project being 100% financed and also other priority items, we would be looking at an increase of less than 1% to the levy potentially.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. Yes, based on very high level estimates. Again, until some of these costs are formalized and we have more of our long-term plan and strategic direction in place, it's very difficult to estimate where it'll be. But with the numbers that I have right now, yes, you're looking at less than 1% increase if we do it in 1 year.
Thank you. And one last question for Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, since we are dealing with losses right now in our recreation divisions with our facilities, and you've not done an assessment in terms of revenues versus expenses moving forward, do you anticipate that it would be a wash or that we would still be dealing with losses when we start to reopen the McMeekin, depending on where we're at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, if I understood you correctly, loss as it relates to the McMeekin or the new facility?
Well, the loss that we're dealing with right now with all of our facilities, because we haven't been able to have them rented or used. So right now we're looking at a loss. When you look at the GFL and John Rose and McMeekin in terms of revenues versus expenses. So in moving forward with the new twin pad facility, have you done any estimates in terms of what that would look like in turn? Because you've said we're just going to take the McMeekin budget kind of over to that and there's not going to be any increases. Do you see it being able to maintain itself even with restricted limits?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, with the ice rentals that we anticipate would come for those facilities, we would anticipate that we would be able to operate them at no worse a position, if you will, than we're currently doing with our other arenas. The arenas typically cost us money to operate in terms of their overall budget. So that would continue. The piece that would be new with the twin pad really would be the increased revenue as it relates to having the 2 ice surfaces to rent in the longer seasons, which would help to offset the increase in the operations.
I'm just going to close and I'll give my brief comment at this time that at this point, with our current realities, with our day-to-day living and what we can offer in terms of, access to recreational facilities and the unknowns, is I don't support moving this project forward at this time. I do support it at a future date, and I do think it needs to happen, but not at this time.
Council, can I, I've got a few more councils on the list, but I feel like this conversation, I've heard some similar sentiments from a number of you, which is that you like the project and you think it's a good project, but you're anxious about kind of proceeding with the project right now or making a decision independent of a broader context. That's the sense I get from a number of you. And I share that. So before we go any further, I just want to give you some perspective of where I'm at. First, I want to recognize that I think staff did great work here. I think that this is the way public policy should work. There was a significant amount of legwork. There was a lot of research. There's a lot of data. And there is a defined project that's come to us that meets a need that staff's developed. And when things follow that path, 99 times out of 100, I'm very kind of eager and inclined to support them. And I recognize the need for this project, and I want to find a way to support it. But I think one of the difficulties I'm having is we're making this decision right before our budget, when we're having a broader conversation about the needs and demands on the municipality on a going forward basis. Now, I am hesitant and reticent to not make a decision on this project in the near term. I don't think we can kick it off in perpetuity. I think staff needs some direction on it. But I think that it would make the most sense for us as a governing body to make that decision in the context of our budget when we're looking at all of the other budgetary demands and either decide to move the project forward at that point or not move the project forward at that point. I'm a little uncomfortable making the decision in advance of budget, particularly when I'm hearing things from council about liking the project, but just being insecure about the timing of the decision in the context of other demands in our time. So I thought one of the things we could do is narrow down the options to some degree and then maybe refer the matter to budget so we can make a decision on it when we sit down to budget on a going forward basis. From my perspective, there really is only 2 options if we're going to build a rink. And that is doing the full project or doing a single pad. And let me just explain that. I don't see the second option of doing 1 pad plus leaving it available for the second pad, because that's $24 million. And you're already on your way there. So if you're going to spend $24 million, you might as well finish that second pad. Because if you're going to finish that second pad, if you're going to wait, that second pad is going to be a lot more expensive in the future. So either we do 1 full pad and we decide that that's the project, and I'm not saying we do that, make that decision today, or we do the full project. This halfway mark, I don't think is a good option, just from the perspective that we're so close to the full project, and that will just be a significantly increased cost when we get there. And I think we could just look at the cost of if they had finished this project back when they originally started. And I think I had the year written down here, which was 2009. I'd be really interested to know what the double pad would have cost in 2009. I think it would be significantly lower than what we're looking at today. And I think the longer we kind of kick off a project, just the more expensive it's going to get. So there's a defined project here. I think staff needs direction from us. I don't think staff needs direction from us tonight. I think if staff got direction from us this year, it would still have time to either move the project forward or look at other options. But I wanted just to give that to you and suggest to you that you don't have to decide one of these things tonight. You can refer the matter to budget. You have the right to completely vote it down tonight, and we not go ahead with it, period. And you have the right to kill the project tonight, or you can defer the project to budget, and at budget we can make a decision in the context of the other demands on our resources. And from my perspective, I'd be comfortable making that decision in the context of budget, and I would suggest that we could refer it there if council was inclined. Before I go back to council, I did have one question for Ms. Beeman that I've been trying to puzzle. The actual construction cost of the double of the full project is 21 million, and there's 6 million in fees and professional fees and contingencies and general requirements. So is that ratio of like 75 to 77% construction and like over 20% in contingency and professional fees, is that common for a project of this size? Because to me, it just felt like a significant variance, going from a $21 million bill to a $28+ million price tag.
Yeah, so certainly I think some of the items that you're referring to in there would also include the demolition of the McMeekin Center. Those aren't really truly soft costs. Those are actual costs that are needed for the construction of this project. I think we were just
I accepted those. So there
Okay.
was 6 million, I took the $1 million out for demolition, so I apologize. It was 21 million in hard costs to build, and it was over 27 million in total costs, with the exception of the demolition. I was taking that out. So there's over 6 million in soft costs.
Right. So I think some of that aspect is just understanding how that construction cost element breaks down. The construction cost is a net construction cost. On top of that, you need to add the contractors' markups, their requirements and fees. Those aren't actually soft costs. A lot of those are bonding and insurance. Beyond that, there are pricing contingencies for unidentified items that may come up through construction. So that would be the elements you notice there, the 5% construction contingency, and building permits and fees also factor into that. Those line items are very standard in construction estimating.
So my feeling, council, is that I think that this cost is going to be, this project, whatever project we choose, is going to come significantly more expensive with time. I actually think it's going to become significantly more expensive the later we get to it next year or the year after, because of all the ISEP projects that are going to get money and all of the projects that are going to get into the hopper late next year. We have one ready to go, which would be able to get going on earlier. And if we were going to do a project, I think we should start the project next year. If we're not going to do a project, that's a different story. But my feeling is that we should, our real kind of, from my perspective, focus should be whether we build a double pad, whether we build a single pad. And if we're not going to do either of those things, we need to give staff some direction by the end of the year to move on from this project and keep it on the shelf for the future. Those are my thoughts, and you can kind of take those for what you will as we move through this discussion. I've got on the list Councillor Nero, and then I've got Councillor Shoemaker, then Councillor Dufour, and then Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for those comments. I think you encapsulated where most of us are going on with this, it sounds like anyways. A couple of questions still, even though after those comments. Mr. Ver, if we did do this project, how far could the project advance? And, at what time would we still be eligible to qualify for a grant?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. Unfortunately, I think the answer is it really depends. Some of the funding projects, the actual criteria says you can't have started the project. And then in other cases, projects can be funded within the scope of a project that's been started or underway. So unfortunately, I don't think I have an answer for you because it really depends on the specific program criteria that would be launched in the future.
Right. So even though we monitor it and watch for them, we're not guaranteed that we would qualify, depending on where we were in construction.
That's right.
Thank you for confirming that. My second question was answered as far as the cost goes. Councillor Christian threw a cost of maybe it could come in at 32 million. Would anybody make a comment on that, on where for sure we think this estimate could come in at? I know we talked about 15 to 20%, but if I could hear the number, is it 32 million? Either Mr. Ver, Mr. Pastor.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. I guess the way I would look at this is, the third-party cost consultant, they've run numerous offices and collect the database on projects as they happen. And so when they're developing a cost estimate at 95% construction documents, as they did, it's a measured methodology. So they're actually pricing it just like a general contractor would during tender. So the degree of accuracy, and we only rely on the guidelines, but the degree of accuracy in a Class B estimate is 10 to 15%. That means 10 to 15 in either direction. So it could come in lower, come in higher, but generally you can rely that it's going to be somewhere within that 10 to 15%. What you have to remember too is that once you do go out for tender, that you're not committed to that. The tender is the process by which the construction industry basically prices the project, and you receive the actual tender cost. So at that point, it's no longer an estimate, it's actual. But we wouldn't encourage you going out to the industry if you don't intend to move forward with the project, because it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars for the contracting industry to be able to respond to a tender like this. So at this point, you have basically a $25 million construction project plus all the soft costs and demolition costs that add up to 28.2. And perhaps, I guess, the fundamental difference between now and before is that you're relying on some ISIP funding, which would reduce the overall, cost obligation to the city. So the decision is fundamental. Are you, if without the funding, you're generally looking at a project value of $25 to $28 million here. And if you set your budget and it comes in slightly over, you can still value manage scope out of the project to hit your budget. So the fundamental decision is, are you willing to spend $25 to $28 million, because it's no longer a $6 million commitment.
Okay.
I trust that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And for the most part, where I'm having some difficulty, I guess, in the estimates, we have a couple of lines: the pricing contingency at 3% and construction contingencies at 5%. How do those relate to the 15% that we just talked about?
So that's an excellent question. In estimating, the policy is to carry contingency, which is a little bit of, call it a buffer, to allow for things that have been either not measured during their process of measuring the project, and or if things occur during construction. So in theory, when the tender closes, the 3% disappears. You're still left with 5% contingency that you carry in your budget to deal with unforeseen conditions, right? The 10 to 15% is a threshold that reflects the accuracy in the market. Like if the cost consultant and ourselves could predict what asphalt and gold was going to cost or copper tomorrow, we wouldn't be doing this for a living. So it's really that threshold or buffer to allow the market to swing in either direction. You know that local market conditions affect pricing. COVID, for example, will affect pricing. So that's why there's a 10 to 15% buffer there.
Got it. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
My next question, Mr. Mayor, if we don't do this project, and by the way, I'm in favor, I think we should defer this to budget, have the conversation at that time when we know what we're dealing with. But if we don't do this project, we're going to have to do something with McMeekin Center. And I know in your report somewhere that Mr. Ver, you did put a number in there somewhere around 3 million that we would have to do. Is that immediately if we just don't move ahead with this project?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, no, that was an estimate done recently with an inspection we had, and they anticipated in the next few years it would be $3 million without any failures.
Councilor Nero, to your question, like, we wouldn't have to spend that 3 million tomorrow, but if we don't do this project, that means we keep on using the McMeekin. And we keep on using the McMeekin, that 3 million's coming. And that's to your point, that would be $3 million we would never get back and put into a facility that we know is incredibly old and very tired.
That's right, Mr. Mayor. And I guess my problem now is, you know, we're only a month away from budget, if that. We're a couple of meetings away from budget. And if we have a sense that we don't want to spend $32 million tonight, I can't see how I'm going to change my mind to spend it next month, knowing what I know from the reports, both from finance and the estimates that we had. So I go back to your comments, and my feeling is, you know, presently, if we're going to leave this until budget, that maybe we should have some hard costs come back at the same time on running the McMeekin for some time, because you know, I just don't see anything changing from now until next month. And that's my problem. That's why I asked the question. Should we not have something coming back to budget, so when we consider this again, we do have that other option of doing nothing and going ahead with some remedial work to get another 5 years out of this arena? That's where I'm at. But I think we have to make that decision tonight so that it could come back for budget.
Yeah, so well, I think staff is hearing you, and I'll just go to the CEO here, and Mr. Vere's in the line. What Councilor Nero is saying is he would like a more definitive sense of what it will cost us and what you need to do immediately to make sure it's serviceable. If council decides not to move ahead with this project, what kind of money in the next couple years or few years, or what kind of money will you need to put in the McMeekin to get it through the next, I think you said 5 years, Councilor Nero.
3 to 5 years, Mr. Mayor. I think we have to keep in mind the reason we're talking about putting a new arena up is that there's a need for it, and there's a need with all of the arenas running. So if that facility shuts down, I think we would have a problem. So I think we need that information.
That goes to the heart of my comments, Councilor Nero, because we can't leave this open-ended. We have to decide by the end of the year whether we're building a rink, whether it be one rink or a double pad, so that staff can move ahead. And if they need to put money into McMeekin, they can do that. And what you're saying is you'd like a more definitive sense of that at budget so that we can compare that to the other options.
Absolutely, because my feeling is that we have to make that decision at budget as well.
Yes. So, Mr. CEO, it seems like a reasonable request to me. Do you understand what Mr. Councilor Nero is looking for there? And are you comfortable staff could work that up for budget?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, we certainly understand that request. And if that's the only additional information request, that's fine. You don't need to do anything. We can bring that forward should Council choose to postpone this to budget.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor Nero?
No, I think I'll just defer my comments. I think I made my point, and that was my most important point, that we needed to something to come forward together with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have Councilor Shoemaker next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on Councilor Nero's request for additional information, I think we also need additional information on the cost of building the single pad within the, I think what they call it is Class B cost estimates, the 10 to 15% rather than the 20% that they're currently at. I realize it will cost us some more to finalize single pad drawings, but I think in order for council to make a reasonably informed decision, we need to know the full scale of what we need to know. We need to be comparing apples to apples, essentially. And it sounds like from Ms. Beeman's comments, we kind of aren't at this point. So I would ask, perhaps move that single pad 95% construction drawings be prepared so that they could be estimated to the same level as the double pad drawings are currently estimated at.
Before you move that, I just want to ask the CEO or maybe Mr. Vera, maybe even Ms. Beeman, she's still on the line. What is the timeline and the cost associated with doing that? Like, is would be a cost to developing those drawings? Like, just so before council directs you to do that, can you give us a sense of that?
Yes, certainly, through the mayor to Shoemaker as well on this topic. We've spent almost about a year now on the drawing package to get it to 95%. And obviously that came with a significant price tag in terms of the city's expenditure to get the drawing package there for the whole consultant team. I would imagine that getting the drawing package to a point where you could make a reasonable decision wouldn't require taking it to that point. We wouldn't necessarily need to take it to 95%. Perhaps we could just do a shorter investment and look at schematic drawings, because there are a lot of decisions that would need to be made to inform that in terms of how the building was oriented on the site and what level of information would need to get to the cost estimator. So I think we would need to take that away with the project steering committee and determine what extent is still in the facility. If it is a single pad, get a lot of direction from them on what's still in or out of the facility at that point, so that it could inform the cost estimate process. But I think we would basically go back to the schematic drawings that we would have done in the first phase of the package for this facility.
So Councilor Shoemaker, can I suggest then, and you can let me know if you think this is consistent with what you're looking for, if we ask the committee and our consultants to make their best efforts to give us a more accurate price on a single pad without incurring any significant costs relating to that? Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat confused, if you can put it that way, when one of the options tonight is to approve going forward with the single pad, and we're told that tender documents could be ready within 6 weeks. So that answer seems to be different than what's in the slideshow.
Mr. CEO, you had your hand up there for a second. Did you want to add something? I didn't want to skip you here.
That's okay, Mr. Mayor. You caught what I was going to say with your comments.
Okay.
Can I just add some clarity to Mr. Shoemaker's comments regarding the 6 to 8 weeks tender is not to prepare the tender documents. It's the actual tender process. The documents are complete.
Yeah, but not for a single pad. He's saying
no, correct. Yes.
If you look at the options, though, it doesn't give you that impression of the material you gave us.
Correct. Yeah.
To go that route, you didn't have that extra timeline in there building that package out, and I just think you just didn't put that in the presentation.
Right.
Yeah. So, Councilor Shoemaker, I mean, this is a whole different project, and they'd have to do a lot of, I guess, design work before they could even tender that project out. So there would be a time delay there. So I think staff understands the information that you're looking for there. Do you have any other questions, Councilor Shoemaker?
Just that the time frame to revise the drawings is in there. It's 2 months actually. The tender is 6 weeks, so Mr. Pastore was right. But I'm wondering if we can bring something, I guess, slightly more accurate back within 5 weeks, basically before budget. We're 5.5 weeks out. So is that reasonable? It sounds like Ms. Beeman is saying that we can kind of get there.
Yeah, I think the response was that they could bring something back more pointed.
Okay, but so that I mean, I have questions, but if we're going to defer it and get more information, I think it makes more sense to ask those questions at a future meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Can. So just so everybody's aware, Councilor Dufour's video connection was unstable, so he moved just to audio. Go ahead, Councilor Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question is for staff. I was just wondering, for the public's benefit, for the other recreational centers that the city has built, have those been done with help from other levels of government?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour. The Memorial Gardens project received 7.4 million through the federal and provincial super build program and $1 million from NOHFC. The John Rhodes expansion was a $7.1 million project. No grants were received for that project. NOHFC did provide a loan in the amount of $2.8 million though at 0% interest. The Northern Community Center, the project's costs were 11.4 million, and Invest in Ontario grant allocation of $5 million was provided, and NOHFC of 1 million, and then the balance was funded through debt.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ver. So clearly we have had some help in the past with some of our projects. My next question is for our Finance Director, Shelley Shell, just about the capital budget annual allocations in the debt servicing report. The allocations for transit and fire that total $430,000, where did they fit in? Are they included in the calculation of 650,000 in the above paragraph? I'm looking at capital budget annual allocations on the second page of your report.
Michelle?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour. No, those amounts still need to be funded. So those are annual capital allocations that will be reflected on the capital budget that you will be seeing for 2021 deliberations. Most rolling stock, as per our current policies, are funded on a pay-as-you-go basis, and they aren't long-term debt. So it's not part of the debt structure.
Okay. So those will be, however, levy impact capital allocations, just not through the debt servicing portion of the budget. Is that, I'm understanding that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, there is nothing in the budget levy currently to accommodate these requested increases.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the debt servicing requirement, were we to approve the 100% exception for debt servicing for the twin pad, as well as your recommendations, which total $800,000 for debt servicing, what percentage would that bring us to for a total debt servicing level for the corporation?
The high level analysis that I have right now is that we would be approximately 3.5%. Or pardon me, sorry. We have $5 million that'll bring us to the 1.5%. I don't have the calculation, or pardon me, the 5%, excuse me. I'm confusing things. Right now in 2019, it's 1.4%. To bring it to the 5% is additional $5 million of debt servicing, but I don't have the total amount.
Okay, so of that 5 million of additional that would bring us to 5%, it looks like you're saying we need 3.5 million plus the 800,000. I guess that's where I'm just getting a little confused.
I'm not sure where you're getting the 800,000 from.
The 650 plus 150 recommended.
Sorry, the 650, it would be 150 per year to cover that 650 over about 4 years so that it doesn't hit all at once. So it's only 150,000 per year over 5 years, or pardon me, 4 years, or it will be 650 in 1 year once that debt is realized.
Okay, I guess all I'm trying to do is just get a sense of how much debt servicing room we would have after doing a potential twin pad and a number of the other things that we know will be coming. And it sounds like we don't quite have that number.
No, if you look at, we have approximately $5 million additional room right now, and we require about 3.5 additional on top of what's already in the debt servicing. So it leaves about $1.5 million of debt servicing room.
I think Jake, we have plenty of debt servicing room. We might in all of the province of Ontario, certainly municipalities our size, probably have one of the lowest debt per capita ratios in the province of Ontario. We have very little debt, and we wouldn't really be adding to our debt because come 2022, we won't have any debt, long-term debt, which is incredibly anomalous. So when you add this 1.6, it's already in the levy. I think the idea is we still have significant room to do some of the other projects we need to do, if I read things correctly. Is that correct, Ms. Shaw?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you are correct.
Okay. It wasn't, a lot of questions have been asked about the debt, and I don't think it's clear that we really do have significant room in our debt service. Okay, was that the extent of your questions, Councilor Dufour?
Yeah, that's the extent of my questions.
Councilor Hollingsworth? Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. You're up next. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. It just takes me time. Thank you. A lot of good questions were asked, so I just have two quick questions. One to Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, you mentioned about in the past other arenas have received funding from other levels of government. And so unfortunately, we did not receive funding at this time. However, behind the scenes, are you still in contact with our MPP? Are you looking at other ways, other possibilities of receiving funding that have not been noted in your report? Is there still a possibility some other funding could be coming down the pipeline?
Tom, do you want me to speak to that?
Probably be best, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah. Look, I can confirm that the MPP, the MP, and I, and we include CEO White in the Speak Weekly. The currently, Councillor, there are no other identified funds for this, and they have just exhausted the fund that they put together, the federal provincial fund they put together. It's not yet spent. As you're aware, the province has gone through its process and made recommendations to the federal government. The federal government will then go through its process of approval, and then they'll roll that money out the door. We don't know of any additional funds coming or any additional monies coming, but they're not through this process yet. But I'll just point out, I think this process was 10 times oversubscribed. So whatever, if they do come out with additional funds, and I'm not confident considering the state of the country's finances and the province's finances, that we'll see additional funds for projects like arenas. But if they do come out with it, it'll be a very competitive process. But it will likely be after we've had to make a decision on this project, if it does come to pass. I don't know that we should eagerly expect that. I think it's more, it's not incredibly likely that there'll be billions more rolled out for recreational infrastructure. Did you want to add to that, Mr. Gray, Mr. White?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Well, we certainly have given the message to the province, both with and the federal government, both at the political representative level and through delegations to other political and staff representatives. We've certainly made the case that the ISIP program was tremendously oversubscribed. We've also made the case to them that if any future program came out, perhaps the subsidy level didn't need to be as favorable for a municipality. They could still do a lot, and the municipality could carry more of the funding burden. Unfortunately, as the mayor points out, we really don't have any clear signals from either level of government as to future programs, and I think certainly pandemic considerations are part of that.
Okay, I know that sometimes in the past, our staff's excellent at basically picking up and looking under other rocks. So it's just worth asking the question, even though, yes, COVID's happening, but you just never know. So, Mr. Mayor, if I may say, is it possible that we can accept the report for information, refer the matter to budget? Councillor Shoemaker, other councillors have made up good points, Councillor Nero. I think it seems like we need to potentially look at the bigger picture. And I know the art gallery, I believe, is now thinking of expanding and might be looking for some funding as well. And as we talked about, there's other projects. I think overall this project is a positive piece for Sault Ste. Marie, but I would like to move forward to refer it if possible, Mr. Mayor.
So yeah, you can accept the report for information and refer the matter to budget. Procedurally, I think you need someone to second that motion. I'm looking at the screen. I have Councillor Nero seconding it. So what Councillor Hollingsworth has done is amending the motion to accept the report and referring the matter to budget for decision. Councillor Nero seconded that. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Please. Opposed? Seeing none opposed, what we're doing is going to be referring the matter to budget for decision. We will make a decision on it this year. The CEO and the deputy CEO have heard, I think, clearly that you're looking for some additional information. I'm sure they'll have that to you for budget. I want to take time to thank Mr. Pastori and Ms. Beeman for making themselves available tonight. And we will we'll return to this matter in our budget deliberations and make a definitive decision on it then. So thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so does that bring us to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk?
I should read just so we can dispose of it. Under that same item, there was the Chief Financial Officer's report. So that was resolved that the report of the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer dated October 26, 2020 concerning long-term debt review for Twin Pad Arena McMeekin Center replacement be received as information. And I'm just opening that to vote.
All in favor? Motion's carried. You can submit your vote on eScribe, and then when the vote's closed.
Then that will bring us to consent.
We are on the consent agenda. I have Councillor Gardy with his hand up, Councillor Gardy, and then Councillor Shoemaker. Go ahead, Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is through you to, I think it was Mr. Ver or Mr. Lamming, potentially, if he's on the line. 6.8.
What item are you on?
6.8.
Okay, so we're on 6.8.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, no problem. So Mr. Lamming is available to us, I understand.
Thanks. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lamming, I think the decision to use the Ermitanger National Historic Site as the main site to sell branded items, Sioux branded items, is a good one. I was just wondering if you've considered opportunities sooner in the near future to utilize a type of pop-up retail delivery occasionally, and or any other locations or events where something like a pop-up retail opportunity would be advantageous. Did you guys discuss that at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, yes, we did discuss this as potentially having a spot where cruise ships could be treated with respect to onboarding when they come to our community. Potential plaza space is also another good opportunity, and also being a distributor to some of the other tourist sites that have already reached out to us to be participate in this program, and they're very excited about it, having one spot to go to through the city, and we would control pricing at a fair margin by securing the product and making sure that's passed along at a very reasonable rate.
Thank you.
Okay, on 6.8, Councillor Shoemaker. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The initial resolution asked for an investigation into potentially selling these products online. What was the outcome of that investigation? Either I missed it in the report or it was silent on that point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, that's a very good point. We're doing a two-staged approach on this. The first is to get up and running to make sure we have the inventory secured at the site and being able to distribute. And then the second phase through the inventory on our site is to investigate online sales as the next phase.
Okay, so their gift shop would develop some kind of online presence? Is that the idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my only question.
Anybody else in 6.8? Councillor Gardy, do you have any other matters?
6.10, I just have a quick comment.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is 610, the rental housing incentive program. Well, I know that this development will be supported by council to receive the 4-year incremental tax rebate program as part of the rental housing incentive program. I just wanted to highlight it, that this development is providing a critical category of housing for urban Indigenous moms and their children, and while simultaneously including services that allow for these moms to more practically pursue post-secondary education. And I commend the Ontario Aboriginal Housing on this development. I just wanted to kind of pull that to highlight it a bit. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anybody else on 610? Seeing none. I've got, before I get to you, Councillor Shoemaker, I've got Vezo Allen and Dufour on 6.9. So let's just deal with 6.9. And I'll go to you first, Lisa, and then to you, Luke.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a quick question to Mr. Rumel. I had an inquiry today. Is there going to be, with Albert being down to 1 lane, going eastbound between Andrew and Gore, is there going to be any additional street parking allocated in that block?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo Allen. So to reduce the through traffic to 1 lane, that would eliminate, I don't think there's parking there now, but there wouldn't be opportunity for street parking there.
No, there's the Greenwoods parking lot, but there isn't. That's their question, is there going to be any allocation for street parking? Because a lot of them are in multi-residential units, so if people are visiting or for deliveries and things like that.
So the work that we would do would have to happen next year to reduce the lane width. We could block it off temporarily with barricades for this year, but it would only, I should say, it would likely be on the north side. We'd move the curb in. So the only space we would be taking for it would be that lane on the north side of the road.
Okay, if we
wouldn't
can
be
take a look at
impacting
that,
anything. Pardon me?
Carl, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
If we could take a look at possibly providing some street parking potentially, that would be, I've had a few inquiries.
So you're asking to look at the adding some parking?
If it's possible,
Sure, we could look at
if
that.
that's possible. Okay, that's it.
Okay, Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question's through you to Mr. Rumiel. Mr. Rumiel, can you just speak to the public a bit about whether or not our consultant considered putting the lights back in at Albert and Gore and what the associated cost with that would have been?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, yes, the short report that we got from SEMA did touch on that as an option, is reinstating the traffic signals, which would be an effective way to reduce collisions at the intersection. However, at like as you say, at a higher cost, just off the cuff, it would be in the $250,000 range to put traffic signals back at that intersection.
Okay, thanks. And is there potentially an opportunity if we are converting to a stop sign there, if it could be the stop sign with the red flashers, as I believe it might be one of the only stop controlled intersections on northbound on Gore?
through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, yes, we agreed some time ago to, when we're putting up a new stop sign, to use the rapid red flasher above the new stop sign, as well as the new burst would be put up, indicating it's a new sign. That would be up for a period of, I believe, 30 days, but the flasher would stay.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Rumiel. That's all my questions, and I appreciate the work done by staff on this intersection. Thank you.
Councilor Shoemaker on 6-9. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have a comment on this, not a question. Last year at budget, we increased the budget as requested by Public Works to have a traffic consultant on retainer, essentially. And they're the ones that looked at this intersection. I think we didn't have that retainer in place when these lights came out. Would have been nice to have that in place, but I think going forward, obviously, anytime there's signalized changes or signage changes to intersections, would make a lot of sense to have SEMA or whoever is on retainer at that time look at those intersections before it's done.
Okay, so that was just a comment. Anybody else on 6-9? Seeing none. Councilor Shoemaker, do you have any other matters in consent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. 6-1, CAO evaluation process.
Yeah.
Through you, I guess, to Mr. White, does any part of this process envision an annual report, a public report to council, just on the fact that the process has been undertaken and, you know, if there are any recommended changes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. One element of this that would be public would be part of the goal setting that council would do with the CAO position, specifically when those goals are referred back to the strategic plan and for general corporate involvement. So that part of it would become kind of an annual exercise. And certainly that part of it would let people know that the process was occurring annually.
Yeah, okay. I think that's it didn't really say explicitly in there whether or not there'd be any public report, but I think as long as it's included somewhere in our records that this, in the public record, that is, that this process has been undertaken, that's important for everybody to know.
Anybody else in 6-1? Okay, Councilor Shoemaker.
Yes, just one more, Mr. Mayor. 6.6, the tender for 435-foot buses. I guess this would probably be to Mr. Lamming. I see he's turned on his camera. What was it, Mr. Lamming, about the tender from, sorry, my screen is just blank right now, the middle tender that didn't meet specifications but was quite substantially lower in cost?
Dear Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Shoemaker, the main thing, there was a number of items on the specifications that weren't met on that tender. The biggest part being the specifications of it being on a medium frame, engine components, transmission, those things that were must in the submission.
Okay, and I do think it makes some sense to source them all from the same spot for interchangeability of parts. So I'm happy with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else in 6-6? That's it for Councilor Shoemaker's consent matters. Councilor Christian, you had sent me a text that you had a couple matters on consent. We'll go to you next. Yeah, I've noted you, Councilor Bruni. So we'll have Councilor Christian, then Councilor Hilsinger, and then Councilor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just give me a sec here. 6.2, the pandemic update. I guess if I could, I'm just trying to bring it up. If you can just be patient for 1 sec. I'm looking at Ms. Shell's report. I guess a question through you to Michelle, just for the public's to be aware, according to the municipal operating section, it's safe to say that the provincial and federal funding under phase 1 was enough to cover the shortfalls that the city experienced as a result of the pandemic so far. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. Yes, that's correct for the municipal operating portion.
Okay, thank you. Under transit, on that same report, it says that it should cover all of our transit pressures incurred from April 1st to September 30th. And you anticipate a shortfall of just over 225,000 to the end of the year. Is that a shortfall in terms of what we would normally have received in revenue, et cetera, from transit? Is that the 225 you're comparing to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. The 225 is COVID operating costs pressures that we would not have covered with the funding. The transit funding is a little bit different than the municipal operating, and it's covered by a different ministry than the municipal operating as well. Okay. So that funding, the phase 1 that we've got, goes actually from April 1st to September 30th, and we are covered to that portion. We have to submit various reports to the Ministry of Transportation, doing our estimate to year end as well as to March 31st. So then they'll be reviewing that as to whether or not phase 2 funding will be received by the municipality. So we really don't know at this point how much we may get to cover that. It may be a cost that we have to cover as a municipality, but they have told us that we should have notification on phase 2 funding before year end.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, under Appendix A, I was just looking through all the operating budget, and I noticed fire overtime expense. And it's a minus 39,005. Does that mean that's an expense that was incurred overtime of $40,000?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, yes, any negative amounts on there are operating pressures. Positive amounts are savings that we incurred to offset them.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how is that COVID related? We put it under COVID. How I don't understand 40,000 in COVID related overtime.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, that may be best addressed by the fire chief.
Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. A lot of the overtime was due to maintaining our minimum staffing. So if we had individuals that were off sick, we had to backfill, and there was a premium to backfill to maintain our minimum staffing each day.
So that's that, but that would just be general operating procedures, people booking off sick.
Well, it all depends if it was COVID sickness related or not. Earlier on, we did have some staff members that were off and had to be quarantined due to travel in the initial early stages of the pandemic. So that was probably why it's directly related.
Wow, that's a big number. Okay, thank you. That's all I have on 6.2, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else in 6.2? Before we move on from 6.2, I just want to make a comment. I want to thank the federal government for largely providing this funding, and the provincial government for working on that and negotiating the funding from the federal government, and for both levels of government for doing this. But I really want to recognize our staff, because I think when you look at this report, you'll see that they've worked really hard to minimize the impacts of COVID on our municipal budget, and they've put us in a really good position to succeed in doing so. I can tell you that I've talked to a number of my colleagues who are facing their budgets next year, and they're not in this shape. So it's a credit to the kind of year over year effort staff puts into proper financial planning and financial management. And it's an effort to it's a commendation of the effort that our staff has made this year in very difficult circumstances to keep us in a good position so we don't pass on a significant deficit levy increase to our taxpayers. So I want to thank the CEO and the team here at the city for doing such good work that's outlined in that report. So thank you. So Councillor Christian, do you have any other matters on consent?
Yeah, just one other 6.3. And
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And before I get there, I too want to thank staff for their efforts. I think in the end, it's well noted that we've, as a community, as a city and staff, we've done a really good job. And I think the outcomes we're seeing right now, even financially, I echo your comments, Mr. Mayor, we've done a good job. So thank you. I just have one question, and it's coincidental because I was going through the financials and I stumbled upon fire services, and I noticed that the actual year-end budget for salaries was 14.9 million. And yet we're budgeting for 2020, 13,360,000. I don't know if the fire chief or the CFO can answer the question as to why our budgeted number is actually lower than our actual year end from the year before. It just caught my eye, and I just thought I'd ask that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. I'm going to refer that to Jake Bruzis, our Manager of Finance, as he prepared the report.
Sure, thank you.
Jake, are you available?
Okay, it appears.
Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, the reason why the actuals were so much higher than budget last year is because of contract settlements at the end of the year. So it's an anomaly that the actuals were so much higher than what we actually budgeted for. This year's budget is not including any potential retroactive contract settlements.
Okay, thank you very much. That makes sense. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so Councillor, did I say Bruni then Hilsinger, or did I say Hilsinger then Bruni? I don't recall what I said. So we'll just go with Hilsinger. I have a note, Hilsinger. Councillor Hilsinger? Yeah, I have Hilsinger and then Bruni. I wrote it down here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, I wanted to make a comment on 6.7, the Cultural Vitality Committee. This new committee that's being proposed to continue to take us forward in arts, culture, and heritage. And it makes me so very happy to see that we are continuing to take this seriously and making investments in arts and culture, but also in how we do and what we do, and that this is going to see the transition of a couple of committees come together into one and show that we truly do value arts and culture and heritage here in our community, and we're gonna work hard on making more of a culturally vitality driven city. It's really, really great, and thank you to Virginia for continuing to push this forward. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for saying it, Councillor Hilsinger. I agree with you completely. So I share those sentiments. Anybody else on 6.7? Oh, Councillor Bruni, your turn. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 6.11, snowplow turnaround, and just a concern to Mr. Girardi, if staff can go back and visit the area. Apparently they did some ditching, but the water is not flowing, and the resident called me on the weekend regarding this. So if you can send a crew there to maybe re-ditch, that would be appreciative. Thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Girardi heard you there, and he can give you a call offline about that if he has any further questions.
No.
Any other matters on consent, council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
A motion by Councillors Nero and Hilsinger resolved that all of the items listed under date October 26, 2020, agenda item 6, consent agenda, be approved as recommended.
All in favor? So thank you, that's passed. I'm going to be passing the chair to Councillor Scott. He's going to take the remainder of the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Scott. I appreciate that. The clerk and the deputy clerk will support you. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item 7.7.1, the James Street Neighborhood Strategy. I have a motion by Councillors Bernie and Hilsinger, resolved that the report of the Senior Planner and Junior Planner dated October 26, 2020, concerning the James Street Neighbourhood Strategy be received, and that Council approve the James Street Neighbourhood Strategy 2021 to 2025. Direct staff to begin efforts on all action items recommended in the James Street Neighbourhood Strategy, including reaching out to community partners to pursue various neighbourhood improvements as indicated, and direct staff to review and report annually on the progress of implementing the James Street Neighbourhood Strategy. And there was several items of correspondence that came in that you will have received on your addendum. And I understand that Steve Turco and Patrick Lowe from the Planning Department are on the line, as well as Don McConnell.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Forgive me, do I start with council questions on this one? I think I would, correct?
Yes.
Because I have a list, that I was dictated from the mayor, so I believe Councillor Shoemaker wanted to go first. So, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. And thank you to Mr. Turco and Mr. Lowe for this report. It's very comprehensive, very well put together. So my first question is that on a number of these recommendations, so I think they start at page 11 of the lengthier 25-page report. So you've got 1.1 to 1.7 on that page, and to take just one of them, 1.5, for example, says, consider expanding Anna Marinelli Park onto the existing unpaved parking lot abutting the park in front of the soup kitchen. So, and then 1.1 is to resurface Anna Marinelli Park. So we're immediately, if I'm understanding the report correctly, immediately starting work on Anna Marinelli Park, but at some point in the future considering expanding it. So I'm just wondering the use of the term consider there. How does that, what directive are you asking from council there? We're considering it tonight.
Mr. Acting Mayor, through you to Councillor Shoemaker. As the clerk indicated, both Steve Turco and Patrick Lowe were the principal authors of this report. So I'd like to refer that question to them.
I believe we have. Oh, there we are.
So yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for the question. I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the overall document is a series of recommendations that we hope to have council consider both in the short term as well as the medium and long term. The path forward is twofold. One, staff has already initiated a series of action items through our current operations. So we have begun a series of implementing actions as part of our ongoing operations. But the second part of it is to report back to council annually to update council on the progress of the strategy, but also to make recommendations on future action items that council can consider as part of future budget deliberations.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering about the potential efficiency then of doing, for example, all of Anna Marinelli Park work at one time rather than doing some of it now and then some of it at some point in the future, whenever that might be.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I guess in developing our recommended action items, we try to go after what we're calling our low-hanging fruit. So things that we can accomplish without the need for certain budget allocations. The proposed resurfacing and updating of the playground equipment at Anna Marinelli Park had already been budgeted through CSD. So that process had already begun. The expansion of Anna Marinelli Park would require additional resources in the future. So that's why at this time we're suggesting a phased approach.
Okay, thank you. That answers it. Through you to Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, where does the when we do severances, there's a parks levy that's imposed on severed property. Where does that money go?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that money goes into a Parks Reserve Fund. And then council approves the use of that fund for parks maintenance or parks improvements. Also includes improvements to our community centers as well.
So do you know, Mr. McConnell, or perhaps, I don't know if there's anyone from Mr. Vare perhaps on the line, are we using the Parks Reserve to update Anna Marinelli Park's playground equipment, the stuff that's scheduled to happen immediately? Mr. Lambing, if you want to take that.
Yeah, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, in partnership with the Soup Kitchen, we received $50,000 and another $20,000. I went through a tender process. The actual solid surfacing is arriving tomorrow for installation. That leaves us another $24,000 remaining to do some play structures at the site. So our goal is to get the solid surfacing in this year and then to have the playground equipment on order. So that was all fully funded through a partnership with the Soup Kitchen.
Okay, yeah, personally, I'd like to see the expansion of that park come forward as a capital request in the budget. Mr. CAO, how can I make that happen? Obviously, I can bring a motion, but I'm wondering if that needs to be done or not.
I think in this case, Councillor Shoemaker, we would like a motion. Just because I'm not sure of what quantum that project is, so it's probably best to have a motion to have it on the record to bring forward for the 2021 budget.
Okay, so I will move to bring forward or direct staff to bring forward a capital request for the expansion of Anna Marinelli Park in the 2021 budget.
And do we have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Nero. Thank you.
Is it possible from a procedural standpoint, Mr. CAO or Madam Clerk, to stand that down till I have a number of other questions on this report, so I don't want to interrupt the questions with various motions if there are any.
I was going to suggest if we can do that after council votes on this motion, then I've got some time to queue them up for you.
Thank you. So the 5-year plan, Mr. Turco or Mr. Lowe, would see, we've got kind of a conceptual drawing here. I think it's on page 9 of the 25-page report. Would see kind of all of these task items brought forward to council, well, either approved tonight as part of the ongoing budget or brought forward to council at various other times for approval?
For you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct. So the intent would be, at least with the physical improvements that are recommended in this report, to bring them forward periodically over the next 5 years.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. And it doesn't say specifically in the report, but is there a like a tree planting program that's being recommended to happen here? It does seem like there's a lot of proposed greenery on here, although it's not addressed, that issue isn't specifically addressed in the report.
Periodically over the next 5 years.
Sorry, we only caught the last.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Again, as part of the overall improvements, tree planting would definitely be considered as part of some of the improvements, especially in and around Anna Marinelli Park, but also moving forward with some of the cleanup of city-owned lands in the area. Tree planting can be part and parcel of those operations. As well, looking at the green space on the west side of Carmen's Way, working with the railway along those lines, definitely trying to clean it up, as well as possibly doing some type of tree planting strategy as part of addressing the aesthetics of that area.
Okay. Oh, did Mr. McConnell, was that your hand, Mr. McConnell?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, in partial response to Councillor Shoemaker's questions, a lot of the items that were specifically identified, a lot of the 21 action items can be completed within existing operating budgets by the various departments. Yes, the city does have a tree planting project, and yes, our public works folks have already started to put material on site in preparation of building a berm next year. So they have bought in, if that is the appropriate, with great enthusiasm, if that's the correct phrase, to this project, to the various strategies. And a lot of them they've already taken through their own operating budgets responsibility for making sure these projects get completed. Sorry, again, Mr. Acting Mayor, as a last thought, there are very few matters that are being recommended tonight that will require additional funding from council. And that was one of the key components when we went into this, is what can we do quickly now within existing budgets? And the answer is quite a bit. I'd also like to stress that most of the suggestions that are in this strategy came from the neighborhood residents themselves.
Thank you. Yeah, I was at one or maybe two open houses at the Soup Kitchen pre-COVID, and they were very, very well attended. So there is also, I also had a question about whether or not some of the community partners in the area. I know the Persia Group is a large landlord in the area, and Algoma Steel obviously is a neighbor along much of the subdivision. If they can be or have been approached about potential sponsorship of some of the costs of this report, for example, tree planting or expansion of the park or additional playground equipment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've spoken to the representatives from the Persia Group as well as other landowners in the area. They're very supportive of the project. They have, in particular, the Persia Group has spent a considerable amount of money on their own buildings over the past 2 or 3 years now. So we can certainly talk to them about making a donation, but I think it's important to stress that the private sector has been making significant investments in the area. And upon council's approval of this document, we are planning to arrange meetings with Algoma Steel.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, and I know that can't think of his name, but he's from the Persia Group. I think it's Steve. Anyways,
Mr. Betts.
Yes, Betts. Yes, that's right. He was eager when the motion was brought, asking for a revitalization plan to participate. So perhaps seeing how their plans can meld with our plan after it's approved tonight, presuming it is approved, would be a helpful step to take, Mr. McConnell. With respect to city investment in this area, Mr. McConnell or Mr. Elliott, or perhaps Mr. Rumio, can you tell me when the last time the city spent any kind of public dollars on construction or reconstruction of any of the streets in this area? I think it's been 20 years.
Through you, Acting Mayor Scott, to Councillor Shoemaker, I did take a look into that. There was a resurfacing of West Street in 2004, and as well as the Carmen's Way, the transportation corridor project in 2004 and 5. And prior to that, we're going back into the 90s, and then in the 70s and 50s, since major investment was made in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, as I expected. Thank you. Thank you for the response there. Last question, then I do have comments, is about the pedestrian crossover. I guess it'd be to you, Mr. The recommendation is for a pedestrian crossover at Albert and Carmen's Way. Now, oftentimes, I drive that route fairly frequently. Oftentimes, there are vehicles traveling southbound on Carmen's Way towards Queen that are turning left onto Queen or eastbound onto Queen, and they're backed up all the way to the transport entrance of the Bridge Plaza. And then that results in transports being backed up all the way beyond Albert Street. So is there concern about pedestrians crossing over there when there's already a lot of commotion, I would call it, in that stretch between Albert and Queen?
Sorry, I'm not sure if the question was addressed to myself or Mr. Romeo.
Mr. Romeo, thank you.
Well, there is, through Acting Mayor Scott to Councillor Shoemaker, there is a center turn lane for left turning vehicles onto Queen Street. So there would be a stacking of transports between Queen and Albert. I think you could fit a few before you got to the intersection. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't drive it as frequently as you, but I don't recall there being that many. I've never had the complaint that the vehicles or trucks were stacking up beyond that intersection. So we haven't. Sorry.
Well, I guess the question from a safety standpoint, have traffic, do we have traffic evidence, traffic engineering evidence to support the installation of the pedestrian crosswalk at that location?
Through Acting Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, as Council adopted the pedestrian crossover standard last year, they are appropriate on major arteries and roads that do have trucks using them. So they have to stop as any other vehicle when the strobe lights are flashing and allow the pedestrian to cross. Now, if a transport happens to be stopped across the pedestrian crossover, which is I think what you were talking about, then the pedestrian's going to have to wait.
Yeah, I think the question really is more so, has it been looked at technically from a safety standpoint?
Technically, no, we have not examined this intersection as a result of this study.
Okay, so before anything was installed, there would be a technical review of the intersection.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd look at it.
Okay.
Councillor Shoemaker, if I could just add a bit of context as to why that recommendation came forward. Staff did spend a lot of time in that area as part of developing the strategy, and it was observed that a lot of people do cross Carmen's Way at that particular location. And from the engagement sessions, we did hear that a lot of people from this neighborhood go up to the Skilton commercial corridor to access things like food and goods and services. So that is a primary crossing point for a lot of people in that neighborhood. So you're right, we didn't look at it through a technical lens at this point. We are just making the recommendation based on observed behavior that a lot of people do make the crossing at this location primarily to access the Skilton area.
I see Mr. Rumio has something to add there.
Through Acting Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, I would say that we have considered the need for a crossing in this area for quite some time, even prior to the adoption of the pedestrian crossovers. In fact, there is a concrete landing between Albert Street and Cathcart now, but there is no formal crossing there. There's landing on both sides of the road. So, I mean, if it was decided that this was a problem, there is the opportunity to move a crossing slightly north. That would require some discussion with Mr. Turco and Mr. McConnell, but that there are other options to and still have a crossing on Carmen's Way, which has been identified as something we'd like to have since we built Carmen's Way.
Right, yeah, and I think the report addresses that intersection and says it's a fair bit wider at Cathcart for a pedestrian crossing because of the turning islands. But personally, I do think it would be safer there. I mean, I'm no expert, but there's a lot less traffic at Cathcart and Carmen's Way than there is at Albert and Carmen's Way, especially with the trucks being backed up from the Bridge Plaza entrance. So that's the only point I was trying to get to there. So before anything, I have comfort that before anything is installed there, someone's going to look at it from a safety aspect. So that satisfies me on that point. I have, that was the balance of my questions. I do have comments, Mr. Acting Mayor. Are we following the same procedure we did with the McMeekin?
Sure, we'll stick with that if you'd like. Would you like to reserve your comments then for the other questions, or would you like to take them now?
I'll take them now.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I said it at the outset to Mr. Turco, Mr. Lowe, and Mr. McConnell. This is an excellent report and really important. Personally, I think it's the most important report we have on council tonight, and one of the most important ones we've dealt with during our term. We've all heard it. We've all heard the comments when you see a strategy come forward for what is referred to in these documents as a stigmatized neighborhood. Why are you spending money there? Why are you spending money in this area? It's full of people that abuse drugs or et cetera, et cetera. Well, I don't buy that, and I don't think it's true. We heard from if you read the report, it stands out very clear. There's more single mothers in this neighborhood. There's less percentage of people who are involved in sports and recreation activities. There's lower incomes. There's more new residents or immigrants to the Soo. It is a neighborhood where our community gets developed, I would suggest. And we would not say the same things about spending money in any other neighborhood in town. We wouldn't say the same things about spending money in the Pea Patch. We wouldn't say the same things about spending money in Bayview or Steelton or Brookfield or Monterey Gardens or any other neighborhood in town. And yet we hear it all the time about this neighborhood. So it's been 20, 30, 40 years, as we heard tonight, since significant investment has been made in this neighborhood. It's time that the city comes to the table to ensure that property values, which we heard are lower, on a per property basis in this neighborhood than elsewhere in town, are stabilized and maybe turned around, which will have the effect of benefiting the entire community. I mean, I know Councillor Dufour knows this argument well. If you increase the property values here, or you stop them from falling, it's going to mean that the tax increases is going to be less across the board. That's what we're trying to do. That's not the only thing we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the lifestyle and the recreational lifestyle folks in the neighborhood. And we're also trying to help the city's bottom line. And as Mr. McConnell said, this is all stuff we could do without raising taxes. This is all stuff we could do within existing budgets. It's not a plan that has that shoots for the moon. It's a plan that is realistic, that gets the job done of improving a neighborhood in town that needs some serious attention, that is very physically removed from the rest of the city, even though it's 300 feet from our downtown. I think it's a great plan. And I think we're going to see a significant turnaround of the stigmatization of this neighborhood with the plan if it is fully implemented. And I would urge all of council to support it tonight and make sure that they support it when the recommendations come forward for requests to improve this area, because I think we have not treated this neighborhood as it deserves to be treated. We have not treated it as equal to the rest of the neighborhoods in the community, and it is no less deserving than any other neighborhood in town. So thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Now I have a list accumulating for comments, but do we have any other questions from any of the councillors? Was that a question, Councillor Vezo-Allen, or was it, were you waving? Oh, okay. Well, you are first for the comments anyways, so we will start with Councillor Vezo-Allen.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I was waving a fly. I just want to really commend Steve Turco and Patrick Lowe and Mr. McConnell for this report. I've been part of many multi-year strategies in my career, and what I appreciate with this one was the actual very authentic input from both people living in the neighborhood as well as business owners. So this has been going on for about 1.5 years now, and I believe it was probably December of 2018 when Councillor Dufour and I had our first lunch with Mr. Al Spadoni and Mr. Daryl Betts and introduced them to the new police chief at the time. So the conversation with both people that live in the community as well or invested in the community has been really well communicated on all levels. And I think what really has hit me is the authenticity of the visions. Those visions, if you look at the second page of what our strategy is saying, are right from the words from people in the neighborhood. And through both the consultations at the soup kitchen, plus there was also local champions, and we all met several times to talk about the neighborhood and what not just concerns were, but also celebrations. And I just want to say that with this strategy, it's realistic, it's measurable, and it's achievable. And we look at so many plans that just sort of sit and collect dust that I've seen from, multifaceted performing arts centers to new facilities that I've dealt with in my past. And this is a plan that's going to work. And I think it really speaks to the people. And I want to, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize some people that were huge contributors to providing services and who have fought endlessly for providing better services in the community. And that would be our dear Tony Martin, who the soup kitchen is named after, and as well the Honorable retired Judge Ray Stortini, who you'll still find in the kitchen on Wednesdays at the soup kitchen. And Ray wrote a really amazing letter. And I think it speaks to a lot of things. People want to be connected. And whether it's a physical connection, but it's also a emotional and economic connection. And I think we're going in the right way. And I commend all of you to spend some time at the soup kitchen. Some of my favorite stories volunteering. I used to bring a therapy dog there, is hanging out at the soup kitchen and really getting to know the neighborhood. And I know my counterpart just goes and hangs out and walks around and sees how things are going. So I'm on Gore Street and Luke hangs out on James Street. So we got the neighborhood covered. But I really want to commend planning for putting this together. It's probably one of the best plans in my 30+ career of strategic development that I've seen done so well, and also with really, really amazing input from the people that it affects the most. So thank you very much.
Had myself on mute. Thank you, Councillor Vezo-Allen. Next up on our list of comments, I have Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Acting Mayor. I wanted to obviously echo the comments of my counterpart, Councillor Vezo-Allen. I think that planning staff put in a lot of work into this report. I think you can really see the result of all of the hours of meetings that have occurred over the last 18 months, a lot of the interaction that they've had, with our residents who live in the neighborhood, and it shows in the quality of the report. I also really wanted to point out the good data that's been provided by the Innovation Center. that really undergirds a lot of the recommendations in this report. As alluded to by Councillor Shoemaker, the data here shows that assessment values are nearly 60% below the average for the rest of the city. And that really speaks to the point that Councillor Shoemaker was making, in terms of the argument for why spend here. The counter argument to that is we already are spending there. We're spending there with lost opportunity to lower assessment values. And this is really how we turn that tide on a real long-term basis. The other thing I wanted to point out that is also borne out by the data from the Innovation Center is that this area is 75% rentals. And that's one of the reasons why I hope that as the DSAB's affordable home ownership pilot goes forward, that Jamestown will be one of the neighborhoods that is able to benefit from these investments as well. So thank you very much to staff and to Mr. Spadoni, Mr. Betts, Mr. Mathewson, Mr. Sims, and all the others who have been constantly in communication with us. This plan is a great stepping stone. There is a significant amount of work that still does need to be done in Jamestown, much like the rest of our downtown. We see a significant need for more homelessness services. We see a significant need for addictions and recovery services, and a clear need for building and bylaw to continue their presence. So that's where we're going, and this has been a really nice plan to keep us getting there. So thanks very much, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Next up on my list for comments is Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Acting Mayor. Off the start, I just want to echo previous councillors. I think it was Mr. Shoemaker, Councillor Shoemaker's. I went to one of the open houses for this project at the Soup Kitchen. It was very, very well attended. And not only was it well attended, but those who lived in and around the area were visibly enthusiastic and taking a lot of pride as to what was going on. So that was really, really good to see. I just wanted to compliment, Councillor Shoemaker on his leadership on the motion, along with former Councillor Grandinetti. I think that's who supported you in this initially, Councillor Shoemaker, and also to Councillor Vezo-Allen and Councillor Dufour, because we all know, I know that this effort is very near and dear to your heart. So I commend you on your leadership and supporting Councillor Shoemaker on this, and I'm happy to support it as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. All right, do any other councillors have any comments? All right, seeing none, I'm just going to quickly chime in with mine. It was basically going to commend staff for the fantastic report. I think a lot of work got put into that report, and it really shows. I really do appreciate a solid report like that. Just as Councillor Gardy was saying, all the hard work put in by either past councillors, current councillors, you can really tell that this has been a long time coming to get where we are today, and I hope that we can see it through. So that was everything I had to say about that. So I think that leaves us, Madam Clerk, did you already read the motion?
I did read the motion, and I have opened it for voting.
Perfect. So council, the voting is on your screen now as well. All in favor? And this motion carries. So
I will just read Councillor Shoemaker's motion. Motion by Councillor Shoemaker, seconded by Councillor Nero. Resolved that staff be requested to bring forward a capital request for expansion of Anna Marinelli Park in the 2021 budget. That's open.
All right, council, so that should be open. All in favor for the motion? And it looks like that one passes as well.
And that takes us to agenda item 8.1, the Walmart laneway on Great Northern Road. Councillor Shoemaker, do I need to read that one again?
I was just going to interrupt you before you started working or reading it, sorry. So I had an update from Mr. McConnell today that Walmart has retained I didn't actually catch what it was. It sounded like it was basically a traffic engineer. Am I correct about that, Mr. McConnell?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, they're actually a site development company. They do act as consulting engineers. They have a lot of expertise in traffic, site services, basically building infrastructure.
Yeah,
we're familiar with the company. That is the company that we dealt with on the expansion to Walmart a few years ago.
That is, I would say, the most encouraging step that we've had to date. It shows that they're serious about this issue. Given the steps they're taking, that clearly evidences their intention to move forward in a cooperative way, and I don't see any purpose to continue on deferring this. I think that they are well on their way to satisfying the spirit and intent of this motion.
Great. Thank you for the update. So I believe that'll leave us with the motion now.
I think if you're just going to leave it, we'll call it officially read and not dealt with.
Oh, all right then.
That will bring us to agenda item 8.2, a motion by Councillor Shoemaker and Nero, whereas the 2016 downtown strategy has a vision that includes 7 vision pillars for an improved downtown, one of which is to create a safe place. And whereas businesses have recently expressed frustration at increased petty crime, which is on the rise across the city, but is acutely present downtown in the off-business hours when many buildings are unoccupied. And whereas to create a safe downtown, the city must invest in technology or resources to create the safe place our downtown strategy strives for. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff be requested to investigate and report on options to create a safe place downtown, which option could include either surveillance in the downtown core or security patrols in the downtown core during non-core hours, and determine if partnerships with downtown merchants or the downtown association can facilitate whichever option is recommended.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So seeing as this is a motion that's been put forward by Councillor Shoemaker, would you like to speak to it first?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. This is one that, if anybody's been following the reports, there's lots of news from the Downtown Association. There's lots of news from downtown merchants about the need for increased security or some other type of monitoring in the downtown, as we've seen a significant increase in crime in the area. So I worked closely with the mayor on this motion. We had an individual reach out to us specifically at one point and ask us about, what's being proposed here. And so I think he's also noted that he has had a number of individuals reach out to him on previous occasions on the same or similar issues that are raised in this motion. So it was put together, a collaborative effort, and Councillor Nero was involved in that as well. Thank you, Councillor Nero, for seconding that. And it's basically to see what we can do. And I know that the police services have recently sent an excellent officer to be their downtown association liaison, and I know that she's excellent because she's a family member. So I've known her my whole life. She's my first cousin, and I think that strategy of increased downtown presence from police service and increased involvement between the Downtown Association and police services, as well as this request for additional security or surveillance, whatever the case might be, can improve the situation. It's not going to be any one issue that solves all the downtown's problems, but I think we can chip away at them in a reasonable way. And the only thing I would add is that I've been another individual's reached out to me that owns a security company in town, and he has said that he's got a number of cameras on buildings in the downtown area. So perhaps partnerships can be formed that could reduce the costs of implementing this. So I would ask that the staff in their research discuss with various stakeholders and see if there's savings to be had by partnering with this is wireless comm in particular, but I think there's probably others as well. So I'll leave that with staff, but I hope all of council will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And seeing as this is seconded by Councillor Nero, I'll go over to you if you have anything you'd like to add.
Well, thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. And let me start by saying I'm happy to second the motion from Councillor Shoemaker. As the resolution states, businesses have expressed frustration with the increased petty crime in the downtown area. I have met personally with the GM of one of the businesses located downtown, and he certainly expressed his significant concern with the increase in the petty crime and the situation that's happening there. It's not just the businesses. I've had people who attend different places downtown mention, that expressing the same concerns that the downtown has changed recently for the worse. And hopefully this motion brings us to a place, and it could be a start of something positive. So I'm happy to second the motion, and hopefully something can get going there. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nero. Okay, so I've got a list here. Next, I've got Councillor Vezo-Allen, and then I have Councillor Hollingsworth.
Point of order.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to do this. Point of order, Acting Mayor. This resolution was actually put forward by Councillor Susan Myers and myself in 2017. So I'd like to ask this to be deferred or have City Clerk pull the list of resolutions. We had something almost exactly the same.
Madam Clerk, I'm not sure where to proceed for this one.
Neither am I. I don't want to ask you to recess now for me to try and find an outstanding motion from 2017.
I did email the City Clerk. I apologize to give her much time, but I just do not know how else to proceed.
When did you email, Councillor Hall?
The motion. Councillor Myers and I have talked about security for downtown for some time when she was on council.
I suppose, Mr. Acting Mayor, if you want to, we could postpone it until the November 9 meeting, and in the meantime, we can look at what the previous motion may have been.
Sure, I think that would be the best way to proceed in this case, I suppose.
And in addition, to see what work has already been done by staff so that we don't have duplicate work going on.
Right. So, Madam Clerk, would that be the right way to proceed then?
I've canceled the vote on this. We will postpone it, and we'll see how similar it is, and I will bring that information to the mover and seconder.
Great. Okay. So do we have to do anything else on that matter then? And we would just move on to the bylaws, or?
Move on to the bylaws.
All right.
Thank you.
So I have a motion by Councillors Nero and Shoemaker, resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date October 26, 2020 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
And for closed session, I have a motion by Councillors Burney and Shoemaker, resolved that this council move into closed session to discuss one item subject to third-party confidentiality. Further be it resolved that should the said closed session be adjourned, the council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matter without the need for a further authorizing resolution.
All in favor? Carried. All right. Thank you, council, and I'll see you at the closed, or hear you at the closed.
Madison.